Planning Board, Thursday, December 9th, 2021. The secretary will call the roll.
Chair LaFaro is absent. Vice Chair Finnerty.
Present.
Secretary is here. Board Member Zuccarelli.
Present.
Board Member Long.
Present.
And Board Member Catalinato.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Very good. Could we do the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just have to do my reading. Welcome to the December 9th, 2021 meeting of the Southampton Town Planning Board. Due to ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with Chapter 417 of the laws of 2021 until January 15th, 2022, all of the board's meetings will be held remotely via video conference, so we ask the public to continually check the town's website for updates and new information. We have a full agenda posted on the town's website for today's meeting. The town's planning staff, as well as its applicants and the representatives, will be participating via Zoom webinar, which is being moderated by CTV. Charles Certain will be muting and holding the speakers in a virtual waiting room until it is their time to give testimony before the board. A reminder that the applicants and their agents should state their name and address for the record. As is typical, there are no public comments allowed during our daytime meetings, nor is it appropriate for the public to use a chat function to comment on applications. The link to participate in this meeting via Zoom can be found on the town's website. This meeting is also being live streamed on the town's website and the town's clerk's meeting portal. If you have difficulty accessing the meeting, please visit the town clerk's meeting portal and click instructions link. Board members who must recuse themselves from any application will state so on the record and will be removed from the meeting until the end of the discussion and vote on the application. Finally, in accordance with the legislation, this meeting will be recorded and transcribed at a later date and will be made available for the public. Okay. And I believe we're going to go a little bit out of order. Michelangelo, are you ready to do the town board referral?
Dennis,
Yes, I am.
Dennis,
Yeah.
may I interrupt?
Sure.
We have minutes from 8:12 and 8.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. What's the date, Gloria?
8:12 and 8:26.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll move it.
Motion by Robin, second by John Zuccarelli. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? We have 5 yes, 2 absent, or 1 absent. And Michael, I think we're ready to go with your. We're going to move to your agenda item, town board referral.
Great. And thank you for having us. And today I brought with me Neil Lewis and Andrew Mannett from Malloy College, who are, I believe, subcontracted through NYSERDA to advise and assist municipalities in the adoption of New York Stretch Code. I've been working with Neil and Andrew. I don't want to admit how long, maybe perhaps a year. There were some delays that were beyond the control of town of Southampton that had to do with NYSERDA, and we were waiting on a portion of this code to be re-released. But due to the Clean Energy Community Program that we all participate in, and an available grant, we wanted to move this along. And so while we, I believe about a year ago, presented this to the town board, we had a subsequent meeting, a public hearing a few weeks ago, I think on the 23rd, and we are on for another public hearing and perhaps a notice of adoption as well for the 14th of next week. So we wanted to bring it to the planning board, see if there's anything else we could siphon from you and introduce to the town board. I can go over briefly what this code is all about. Lorian has been a part of the process through the Sustainability Committee, and we just spoke about this the other day, so she's very well versed, and I'm sure she will have some more poignant questions. Vice Chair Finnerty, would you like me to dive into it a little bit?
Absolutely.
Great. So as you all know, we have our own HERS standards as part of Chapter 123 in our Energy Conservation Code. And this is really only applicable to residential buildings, and it's differentiated by a HERS number, and then based on the size of the home. You have a 4,500 square foot home and above, and 45 square foot room home and below. But we've always wanted and aspired to have some kind of version of this for commercial. I know you've all kind of struggled with this as well when receiving commercial applications and thinking about, well, how do we make these more efficient? And commercial HERS is not really a thing. As much as we'd like it to be a thing, it's quite difficult to develop, and how you measure it Is it based off of floor area? It gets quite complicated. So by chance, New York Stretch Code was being pushed by NYSERDA, and there's a commercial element. So we began investigating this further. It also does address residential. So so this is a dialogue, and rather than me just on the podium, feel free to interrupt at any moment because it does get a little complicated. But essentially, if we're transitioning to the residential for a moment, what we'd be doing is removing the HERS title, and it'll be now commonly referred to as the ERI, which is Energy Rating Index. HERS is Home Energy Rating System, right? I believe it's system is for the S, I hope. And so in this case, it'd be referred to ERI, and we would be changing it from is it 50 to 54? Excuse me, 54 to 50. Be lowering the number for the smaller homes, and the larger homes would maintain the same. One of the bigger differences is in New York Stretch Code, there are multiple paths to compliance. So as of right now, if you are pursuing building a home in this municipality, you have to hit this number. If you can't hit the number, you go through a waiver process, or you're considered a historic home, which we've allowed. The the Stretch Code allows for 3 alternative paths to compliance, but we didn't necessarily want that to cast a shadow on our HERS standards that we're quite proud of and been ahead of the state in many instances. So what we decided, and this is where Andrew Mannon and I and Neil Lewis worked together to kind of figure this out, we really would be maintaining our HERS standard for new homes, which is quite easy, not necessarily easy, but it's doable and easier to meet. And for reconstructed homes, you'd have these 3 paths, these alternative paths to compliance, whether it be prescriptive, and a HERS rater would be able to do all of this. So it's no additional burden to the building department. So before I go on, how are we feeling about all this? Any questions thus far?
You're saying the HERS standard would be on anything that's currently being built, or is it in process, an application in? What triggers the new standard?
So it doesn't, so rather than having HERS, we will have the ERI moving forward upon the adoption of this code. Now, whether one pursues the ERI or pursues the other 3 paths to compliance, we'll have to do on if it's a reconstruction or a new construction. New construction would pursue the ERI rating, the HERS, like we have always required. A reconstruction will have this other option. But again, this is only for residential.
Okay.
And Neil, Andrew, do you have anything to input, or if I might have?
Well, Michelangelo, I would agree with your starting point, which was sort of like a doctor that says, let's not do any harm. So part of the point is you have a good system, and we will sort of cheer for ourselves a little because we were involved when Southampton adopted this code and set in place these HERS ratings. So we don't want to do any damage to that. And calling it ERI is just a sort of a change that the state wants us to move towards, but it is protecting the HERS system. The problem was the way they wrote the stretch code is it leaves it as a choice. And when you give people choices, the tendency is not to meet the higher standards. So they would evade the performance tests more often than not. So we don't want to see that happen. So we couldn't just say adopted as prepared by NYSERDA. And it should be pointed out that this exact point was discussed with NYSERDA at several of the webinars. Repeatedly, we raised the point. Repeatedly, they said, oh, you can address that at the town level. And it was like, well, why didn't you just put it into your documents more clearly? Why don't you require performance tests for all new homes across New York State? It's crazy that the vast majority of New York State does not require HERS rating currently, and would not switch to the system we're talking about, which is essentially the same system with a new title, ERI. There's other elements of the law, but I do want to acknowledge your point that it was a little tricky, that we had to make sure that I think the town of Southampton has perhaps the best energy code for new construction in New York State. Others are sort of catching up right now, but if you were to take this action, this would really solidify that leadership and continuing to say, especially with the larger houses, you have to meet a higher standard of efficiency. And we've seen since it was adopted that it works. It works really well. And so part of what has been covered so far was this effort of how we had to present it to the board to make sure that the performance test was still in there.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Thank you, Neil. Because we interacted and worked with stakeholders and spoke to builders and some of the feedback was, in fact, that the difficulty of hitting the HERS or the ERI number. And so these alternative paths with regard to reconstruction and substantial reconstruction, not necessarily with new construction. So New York Stretch Code addresses that by having these alternative paths to compliance. Now, of course, we're a historic community, and there's the first concern of, well, are we now going to be tearing down historic buildings? Under New York Stretch Code, that would not be the case. They're waived. And so, you know, we're kind of, it's to some extent, I don't want to use the word or phrase no brainer, but we're maintaining our top tier position as a more energy efficient and conscious municipality. But at the same time, we're also addressing some problems that our HERS standards may have created. So I think that's a pretty good summary of the residential. I mean, we could actually dive into the code and look at U factors, but a lot of it is building inspector and fire marshal speak. You know, it's looking at U factors. And I have these two gentlemen here to help us interpret that speak, because I am neither a fire marshal or a chief building inspector. So if you do have specific questions, you know, we could go over it with Neil and Andrew, or we could look a little bit more at the commercial side of it.
My question, Michael, is to what extent does town law grant municipalities the ability to adopt their own energy codes, which exceed the New York State Building Code? Do we have broad latitude?
I actually think this is the only situation where we have that broad latitude, that we can go above and beyond New York State. And I know there's some attorneys and land use experts on this call, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, but in this instance, we have to submit this to the DOS to be greenlit. And that's, I think, more of a formality, which upon adoption, that's the first thing I'll do. And that's actually what makes it active. And you know, it's at that moment, this code is enacted.
Yeah.
If Andrew, I don't know if you wanted to chime in on that one.
The state energy code explicitly allows municipalities to adopt more stringent energy construction codes. The rest of the building code, the fire code, everything else, you have to follow the state or explicitly ask for permission to do something different from the Codes Council. Energy is the only item where you can say we're doing something more explicit. You still have to inform them that you're doing something that's more stringent, but they can't say, no, you can't do it. You have the right to do it.
And they do.
Which would make sense because we've done that for the past 10 to 15 years.
And I know people at the town levels often deal with this issue where something's being passed and the question comes up of what's going to happen. Will it be challenged by the Codes Council? And I would just point out the Codes Council has been, you know, kind of technical and sort of restraining on this power of towns by saying, if you do this and you include in it stuff that has to do with ventilation, they would argue that you don't have the right to do that. We would disagree with them on that because heat exchanging units for ventilation is sort of like the next big thing. And it's very important as part of energy use. So we think the Codes Council is wrong on that, but they did issue a statement recently. So in regards to the question about how much latitude you have, as long as it's clearly energy, everyone's in agreement that you can set a higher standard at the town level.
Well, hypothetically, could the town require solar panels on all residential structures that are being rebuilt?
My answer is yes, absolutely. And in fact, we wrote a white paper calling for that for commercial construction, which is something that we're going to make a renewed effort to try and talk to towns about, and starting in January of next year. And basically, we have a formula and a suggestion that all new commercial construction should be required to have a certain amount of solar, so that they're doing at least their part to contribute while building a new building that's going to put a new demand on the electric system. So
because one of the main issues we're grappling out here now is the strain on our electric grid, especially in the wake of the mass migration, I call it, of March 2020, when pretty much most of New York City decided to relocate out here year round, and now it's a year round community. So we're constantly playing catch up with our electrical grid, new poles going up, new transfer stations. So, I mean, if you're going into the suggestion mode, Michelangelo, that would be the top of my list.
If we were to take a moment to kind of like reflect on this year, for instance, we've approached energy conservation and or energy sovereignty through a lot of different angles. Like we're pursuing our own solar panel installation at North Sea. We passed the battery storage code, and now we're contemplating multiple battery storage projects. And this is now, okay, so there's what we produce, what we consume, what we store, and of course, well, how can we actually use less? And this is what we get to do today with building code. And to speak to your point, theoretically, if we lowered that ERI number, that would perhaps cause people to mandate a level of solar on their rooftops. And that, Neil, Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but right now, I think it's going to be a 50, and for larger homes, it still maintains our 35. But if this was something that we, perhaps a recommendation to the town board, which I don't know how they would, view this, but you would knock that 35 to a 30. I know East Hampton contemplated that. I don't know if they adopted it though.
Yeah. Currently, what we're told is to hit the 35, the larger homes generally have to install some solar or geothermal heating and cooling to reach that fairly stringent number. You have to make a very, very tight house otherwise, I think, to hit the 35.
Which works well as a way to get renewables because it's not directly mandating the renewables on homes where you could have some tree issues. And so it gets like I said, we wrote a white paper. We support solar being required for all commercial construction because we think that's fairly easy. The exceptions would be very rare. We did put in a little bit about exceptions, but residential is more complex because clearly you do have a significant number of homes that are surrounded by trees. And, there's going to be some pushback on whether or not you want them on the fronts of all the building homes. So, we just think mandating it there would be a little bit trickier to implement. We know California and other places are looking at it, especially with new construction. But our own thought was to approach it a little bit differently. I think what Southampton has by setting it as a HERS number or what will be an ERI number achieves that goal sort of indirectly. Because as Andrew said, it's very hard to get the house to be that energy. That's a high number or a low number as the formula.
Along those lines, to what extent is geothermal, which involves the well, extracting impact our sole source aquifer, which are also under stress out here now? I mean, I know it's a loop system, but has that issue ever been looked at, or?
It is something that people are looking at. My personal opinion is the closed loop systems probably are not going to have a big impact unless something goes terribly wrong and the loop breaks. But they're 6 feet underground. They're not being exposed to weather. They're pretty secure, I think. And even the open loop systems, you're taking water up and you're putting the same water back down. Again, unless there's a failure in the system where you start leaking coolant into that water, you're not going to have a problem.
I think there is a situation where there was a failure. This is the Koch residence, if I'm not mistaken, which is our municipality, and there is a lot of water disappearing.
I think there is a question about how long the systems are in place that they should be checked at a certain point. So I do think we're at a stage now where there are some systems that have been in the ground for quite a long time, and I know it probably should be a requirement at a certain point they need to be retested or such.
Sounds like a Neil Lewis white paper.
You have to do another paper on geothermal.
No, it's true, especially out here with the aquifer is a big issue out here. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, Shelter Island has a lot of concern on this point too.
And we could revisit residential. I would like a moment to speak a little bit about commercial.
Thank you. That's kind of where I'd like to go.
Sure.
We see an awful lot of applications for Morton buildings. And we now kind of look at how it looks on the outside, not so much the mechanics of whether it's heated or cooled. might you be able to sort of explain how this system might require something different for them in terms of what they're currently building compared to what they might have to build with this new code?
I'm going to default to Neil and Andrew on this.
Right. Again, the main difference when you're talking about the commercial code, it's a bit, it's more technical, but it's a bit more straightforward. It's really just more insulation, you know, better U values, better R values, better mechanicals, more efficient variable speed pumps, things like that, that improve efficiency. The general construction approach really remains the same. It's just you have to use better materials and equipment to hit the somewhat more stringent numbers when it comes down to it, I think.
Although they don't do the performance test.
Yeah,
because as Michelangelo was saying, you can't really just take a door off and do a test on a commercial building the way you can on residential.
Yeah, commercial buildings, they vary too much to have a single protocol for doing the diagnostic testing that the HERS raters do on homes. Homes are all pretty similar. Commercial buildings vary very widely, so there isn't a diagnostic that is as easy to do, and they tend to be much bigger as well.
But with that said, it's a highly enforceable law because it'll say, you know, R values and whatnot that can be checked. You know, you'll see material with the numbers written on them. So it's an easier to confirm than having to do a whole performance test on a big building. So it's somewhat easier to implement and kick it in place. But for the most part, commercial has been getting a pass for quite a while. And this will be the first sort of significant sort of step up where a lot of commercial buildings, they put, you know, air conditioning and heating systems that are, you know, sort of third rate and whatnot. And they're going to be required to be more efficient now if you adopt.
Although they are all commercially available, nothing here is bleeding edge technology that's being required. It's all commercially available, been used in commercial buildings before, not a huge ask of the builders. The one thing that is included that is a bit more innovative is the Appendix CC, which
Right, I was going to speak about that.
Which gives builders requires builders to pick from one of, is it 5 or 6 options to five options to do something with
energy that enhances their energy generation, energy distribution. So it could, why don't you do it? Yeah, no, sorry, Andrew. Just so we all can visualize this, right? We have the state building code and state energy code, which is mandatory. Then in our municipality, we have the energy conservation code, which is something we made mandatory above. And now stretch code is taking it, kind of stretching out that building code, and we can adopt that like we're considering. But in stretch code, they had 2 appendices that they wanted us to consider. Now, these are also optional. In this case, the town board is contemplating adopting these as well, which is Appendix CC, which is what Andrew's referencing currently, and Appendix CB. CC speaks specifically to commercial. I think CB does as well. I'd have to double check. But so the example that we're discussing, so new buildings shall comply with at least one of the following: additional on-site renewable energy in accordance with a specific section, electrical energy monitoring system, incorporate demand response, EV charging station. So all these are things that we're already talking and thinking about. This is just another tool to give you the opportunity to implement it. So we don't have anything in our code that says you need to have an EV charging station. I know Claire has referenced that in certain instances with commercial buildings, we're beginning to mandate that. Well, now we have another tool that says, well, if you can't do an EV charging station because it doesn't really make sense for whatever the applicant's legitimate excuse is, well, consider additional on-site renewable energy. If that doesn't work, you have 3 other options, and it's mandatory. So there's that flexibility that gives you guys a little bit more say, as well as it slowly is preparing the industry to be able to do this on the regular, because that's where we're headed. So this is a couple of years in the future we're going to most likely require EV charging stations as per the state. And again, correct me if I am wrong on that statement, but I think that's the mission given the state's energy goals. We're only going to get there if we start mandating some of these things.
Yeah.
Oh, and I never even mentioned this. There's a $50,000 grant attached to this. Yeah, which I got to lean on the money. So if we adopt it, we'd be able to submit for the grant, and then I think hopefully the play would be to use some of that money to offset our climate action plan, which is that blueprint to get us to our energy conservation goals. So there's a lot of synergy in how we're approaching this. This kind of goes back to that brief little story I said about how we're addressing our energy through storage, production, and now we're looking at how we consume. So all of it is tied together. And this whole year, despite COVID, we've kind of had some success with our energy resilience, despite all of Manhattan coming here and upping the energy bill. Do we have any other questions about commercial? And
I guess I have a bit of a process question from a planning board member's perspective. Of these 5 options that if the code is adopted, the applicant would have to pick one.
Mm-hmm.
That's something, and I'm not sure who can answer this, is that something that we as a planning board may suggest that we'd like you to do this one? Or is this a conversation between the applicant and the chief building inspector before they get a building permit?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know, Claire, if you want to.
I don't know. I'm not quite sure whether that's a legal question, a process question, or what.
From the legal point of view, I think it's the applicant can pick whichever one they want. That's what's written into the code. You have to do one of these. From the planning board encouraging one over the other, if you find yourself with some kind of discretion and you say you want to have some kind of leverage, I guess that can happen. Yeah,
It could work its way into the discussion. It's an interesting question. It hadn't occurred to us until you.
We could codify it, right? Since we can go above and beyond, this could be, rather than where if you pick one, at the discretion of the planning board. I don't know if we want to do that.
I don't know. I mean, certainly if we're in a secret process and we can identify mitigation
Right.
as part of this of the overall approval, to me that's sort of a more black and white. Yes, we can do that.
Yeah, I would agree. As part of the secret process.
Okay.
I think we'll find out. Yeah, I think we'll find out more once you start to see applications come through, right?
Yeah. I think you have to live with the code for a little bit and see.
Yeah, I'm figuring it's there. Like, how do I use it?
There you go.
So this was not only just supposed to be informational, but I'm here to take some comments, and so we can adopt something from the planning board to be presented to the town board, so that when they're making their action, they have your wonderful guidance.
Well, I think we can all say we're certainly supportive of enhancement to the energy code, especially regarding commercial structures. I think commercial structures, more than even residential, present a better opportunity for the installation of solar panels, to the extent that can be mandated or codified. That would be the time to do it. And also the charging stations, I think are really integral to moving forward. Now, a lot of our site plans do not involve extensive site work, but I think we can maybe draw the line where additional drainage is required. If additional drainage on a site is required for parking modifications, that means there's going to be excavation, and it allows for underground installation. So maybe that should be a threshold, as opposed to maybe a facade improvement or modification of interior walls. If drainage work is to be required in the site, that would be the opportunity. They're going to be opening the asphalt, the parking. That's the time to get the conduit in for these charging stations. There should also be a threshold. You know, I've been thinking a lot about this. If you require one charging station for every 20 parking spaces, similar to handicap spaces or whatever threshold, but it should be tied to the number of parking spaces. So, you know, there should be a minimum of one, certainly. So if you only have 11 or 12 parking spaces, one of them should be a charging station. But if you have these larger sites of 40 or 50 parking spaces, we should be trying to get 3 or 4 charging stations.
So for this time around, this sounds like something we would be doing upon adopting the New York Stretch Code. Once it's kind of the quote, Kathleen, you might want to live with the code a little bit and then explore these as options and add this to, I think you have a provision in where through the site plan review, if I'm not mistaken, where there's an energy conservation portion of that code, right? Claire and I were speaking about.
Yeah, we spoke about it briefly, but yeah, maybe and Cody putting in the code. But I think it's a good comment here because it's the start of the conversation.
Okay,
right.
So I'll make a note of
Yeah.
it. So what about, because Appendix CC is addressing commercial, and I think CB does as well, and they're both taking it, while stretch code is here, CC and CB are yet even a further level of efficiency. Perhaps it would be good to get a comment from the planning board of your support for those 2 appendices, if of course the town board was considering not. Okay.
I think we can definitely board members, I think we're all in agreement. I
mean,
see heads nodding.
I think we're looking for more strength for us to mandate, and right now we can just recommend. So,
well, this will give you some more strength to mandate. They'll just have more options, but think of it again as that transition to get the industry prepared and give them the skills to accommodate these mandates, because many are not prepared for some of these additions to our code.
Yeah. And you mind you, you're going to get more pushback from commercial developers because they're going to be tenants. I mean, landlords, and the tenants are typically, they're going to want to build as cheap as possible because they're not incurring the cost of energy. So as opposed to a homeowner who says, yeah, I'm going to be living here, I want all these enhancements. So
That's a good point.
it's good to get started.
In any place where you've got a landlord tenant situation, you've got a split incentive. The landlord wants the cheapest building, the builder wants the cheapest building, and the tenants would like to get their energy bills lowered.
Right.
They're the only ones that benefit from that. There are some lease agreements that can address that, but it's a matter of getting them adopted and you know, getting the real estate industry to start using them. So in the meantime, mandates help because they ensure that the cheapest building that a builder can make is a reasonably okay building, not a really bad building.
Right. Do you have enough to generate a report, Michelangelo?
I do.
Good. That's great. And then Mr. Lewis and Matt, I can't thank you enough for lending your expertise. John, do you have something? You're muted, John. You're muted. John, you're muted.
You started to talk about it, the cost. Should there be some relationship between the gain against the cost? In other words, if you get a certain number and it costs, I don't know, X amount of dollars, but to go the next 5% more, it may cost almost 90% what you cost originally. So is there some sort of relationship that can be put in to indicate that you have to put in something that you only gain 2 or 3% on, but it's costing you 40 or 50, 60% of what you cost to get to the 50%?
Right. I think that's hard to.
I know it's hard to codify, yes.
But what NYSERDA did when they were developing the code is they did cost analysis and they came up with payback numbers for all the different regions of the state. And on average, for the commercial, I believe it's an 11-year payback. But commercial is, the different types of commercial vary wildly. So some of them, it's only a couple of years, others it's longer than 11 years. When it comes to the residential, with the HERS or ERI requirement, the tier system is kind of designed to do that, because the bigger homes are going to be the more expensive homes, and they're the ones that you're really expecting to hit very high standards. People who are building a home over 4,500 square feet are spending a good amount of money on the home already. So we adding the energy efficiency is less of an issue for them. But the smaller homes chose a less stringent standard that's easier to meet with relative to the cost of the home.
I have another question, and it's a little off what we're talking here, but related to it. I've been following, and there's not much on it, the hydrogen car, where they use hydrogen, where it avoids really the charging problem. Have you read anything recently about where they're at? I know several of the Japanese companies are doing it. I think either Ford or General Motors are. They're interested in the hydrogen, where that produces electricity. Have you heard anything that is progressing, or it's slow, or what?
When it comes to the hydrogen fuel cell car, I think years back it was seen as an alternative to the electric vehicle. Right. I think the auto industry has gone whole hog into the battery electric vehicle. I tried to bring the hydrogen car back, but there isn't the infrastructure for it. Like the infrastructure for electricity already exists, so it's a lot easier to deal with.
Oh,
We're ahead of the curve, but that might be a little too far ahead.
Yeah.
okay.
I think you're onto something. I do think that we're going to end up seeing more technology revolving around consuming and producing and storing on site versus elsewhere, and whether it's hydrogen or wind or whatever.
The major problem with it is the explodability of it, and a medium to be able to put in that makes it dormant when not in use. And if that comes, but I've seen also where they use the hydrogen to be an asset to the electric car they're working on. All right, that was it.
All right, Michelangelo.
Actually, before we move on, I just want to piggyback on something that Dennis was saying regarding, commercial buildings and the possible pushback on the people who build the commercial buildings and/or landlords. Maybe an incentive would be, and I'll use solar as the example. If a new building is constructed with solar that meets or actually exceeds energy criteria, can we then use that energy and put it back into the grid by way of maybe the CCA or something like that, thus giving that potential landlord or building owner an incentive to put in these energy efficient uses and possibly use it as a revenue gaining source.
It gets a little complicated when putting back into the grid, and also just to keep in mind. So, for instance, a Kmart, if they were to put solar panels on top of their roof, max out the entire roof, they're generating maybe 30 to 40% of their energy consumption, according to some of the solar individuals we've spoken to. Yeah. So, I think that might be considered in the future, and it may play more to battery storage with siphoning on and off grid. Siphoning on and off peak. And back to the grid, which is something we're going to see more and more of. But I know that interconnectivity is a whole other game, and I think that we're kind of experiencing that right now with our solar project in North Sea.
So we're not there. The technology is not there yet.
It might be there, but I don't know if LIPA wants us.
Why?
Let me jump in. I mean, right now the way it works is excess, because I have panels on one of my houses for a couple of years, and the excess does go back to the grid.
Except now there's that whole tax being contemplated by LIPA now.
Well, I get it back as it's a residential structure, so I get it back in the form of a credit. They don't send me a check, but the energy I'm producing in July gets credited back on my February bill or something like that.
Is that because you guys are so grandfathered into an older system? My understanding.
No,
with the newer
no,
system-
this was a
It's still the case. Okay,
2017 system, and it's standard. It's a standard system.
I'm corrected.
Yeah.
The new life of fee would go into effect in 2022. So anything that was installed prior to the end of this year will not be charged that extra fee if in fact that tariff is approved by the board.
So for instance, with the commercial system that we're looking at North Sea, and through our CCA, we're being told through LIPA that they're going to bill us the equivalent just because they have to restructure their billing to accommodate us doing our CCC. And this is, of course, something that we're arguing with them with the PNC, but this is more Lynn, Arthur, and Frank Sapone and company as we take them on. But it does get complicated, but it's good to know that residential, it is part of the solution. And thank you, Dennis and Lauren, for pointing that out. But I don't want to suck up any more time because I skipped the line today, and I do feel bad already.
Really appreciate your time. Are you gonna adopt something? Are we adopting something today, or are you gonna bring it on next? We are meeting next week. I don't know.
Well, the town board's meeting on Tuesday, so I would like to put it on to be adopted today.
You have our comments then?
Something she's going for the shot.
Which the comments are, I have two comments regarding the threshold and parking standards. I have one comment supporting the overall code and a following comment regarding the two appendices. Am I
So,
missing
and our general support of the town, our board's support of incorporating energy efficiency into commercial structures. So with those comments, I think we have a report, and we need to motion to adopt. We have a motion. Motion by Robbins, second by Zuccarelli. All in favor, aye. Opposed, abstentions. We have 5 yes and 1 absent. Thank you so much, and Neil and Andrew, and great to have you down. Hope you come back.
I will. Thank you, guys.
Michelangelo. Stay well, buddy.
Thank you, Andrew, Neil.
Michael, Angelo,
Thank
will he be able to get us a copy of
Yeah.
that report before it goes to the board on Tuesday?
Yeah, we'll make sure it circulates.
I'll have him email it to you.
Okay.
Good.
thank
Yeah,
you.
because the town board is meeting Tuesday. They want to get this.
Yeah, if we,
And Claire, are you going to lead us off? I guess we'll jump back into order, or
Yep.
are you lead us off into in Southport?
Yeah, this is a modification to a covenant. We've done a couple of these in this subdivision, but we do it generally speaking under the code permits. The modification of older covenants from the 1980s, 87 or so.
Yeah.
That don't line up with the Aquifer Protection Overlay District requirements. So in this case, the covenant restricts it to 30%. The current code is 50%, and this new covenant would reflect the 50%. So, okay. Recommending.
So, our action is to amend the covenant to reflect those changes.
Right, with the typical conditions.
Great. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Gloria.
second,
Second by Robin. All in favor, aye. Opposed, abstentions. We have 5 yes and 1 absent. Is Anthony ready to go on his north lot?
Yes, I am.
All right. Conservation opportunity.
Yes, sir. Just going to share screen. Everybody can see that, right?
Yep.
Great. All right. So this is a conservation opportunity subdivision. We don't see too many of these anymore, but the property is 141 Deerfield Road. This is the Long Island Railroad right here. So the property just to the right when you come over the railroad. As you can see, the green here is existing preserved land. So this piece is a community preservation fund piece. And so the applicant came in with a conservation opportunity subdivision. And I'm going to show you the map in a second. The property had a yield of 9 lots. It's CR 80 zoning district. It's obviously in the agricultural overlay district. It's also in the New York archaeological sensitive area, or partially within it. A conservation opportunity subdivision reduces density by 50%. So in this case, we went from 9 lots to 4 lots, and 80% preservation. And in this case, it was 90%. So we got a 50% reduction in yield and a 90% preservation of the prime agricultural soils. 100% of the soils on this property are prime. Just before I show you the map, when we looked at this, and the planning board looked at this property 20 years ago, they looked at a conservation subdivision. The market was just not good back in 2002. But looking at this, we certainly don't want to put the lots all the way back here, as it would disrupt the connectivity with the open space. We really prefer not to put them along the railroad, as it's just not a good spot for houses. So we looked at this area because it puts it adjacent to the existing residences, and probably makes the most sense. Let me just. So this is the map, this is the property, and these are the 4 lots. And you'll see 2 different ag parcels. This 10+ acre piece is the area that the town would be buying the development rights on. This is the area that equals to what would account for the 5 lots that they're not providing or not building. The rest of the ag reserve would be an ag easement, for which the town isn't buying the development rights, but would still be preserved through an ag easement. And then the 4 lots over here. And let me zoom out a little bit. So this is the plan that CPF was looking at, and I went over this obviously with CPF and Dave Wilcox. And now we're at the stage where we're looking at a pre-application report to identify the issues, which I will go through. So I went through I'm sorry, someone have a question?
Yeah, just, is it currently being farmed?
Yes.
Right? It
Yep,
is.
Halsey's Farm it, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So we have what we call this, basically, it's a planned residential development cluster conservation opportunity subdivision. And 90% preservation, 50% reduction in yield. So that's good. This is just the standard plan, which I said was 9 lots. And they submitted a couple alternatives showing the open space. And that most recent plan that I looked at with you, which is the most recent plan based on some comments they got from CPF and from the planning board at the hearing. Obviously, we're reviewing this as a minor subdivision and a conservation subdivision, so we could go right to the final stage. Under SECRA, all conservation opportunity subdivisions are type 2 actions, no further environmental review. I do note that the property is partially within the archaeological sensitive area, so they'll still be required to do a phase 1AB for the area that would be dedicated for the development, but not on the reserved area. In terms of conformance with the comprehensive plan, obviously the comprehensive plan encourages density reduction and preservation as much as possible, so I think this would be considered consistent with that. The park requirement for a conservation opportunity subdivision is a flat fee, which is currently $2,500 per dwelling unit. And if that's subject to change, of course, as fees always are. We had a public hearing in September. It was closed with a 30-day comment period, but no public comments were received. Here describes all the referrals that we sent out to the standard interested and involved agencies. And of course, I have the comments from the agencies that responded. From the town's Ag Advisory Committee, they find the project, it conforms with their intent of preserving ag land for farming purposes. So they were supportive of the project. The town engineer does note that this portion of the property is a little bit of a low point. So we're going to have to deal with that a little bit with the driveways and drainage. I'm going to recommend, as you'll see, relocating one of the lots to maybe address this a little bit. But he's also recommending a notice covenant for the properties, which we've done before, particularly when we're dealing with ag pieces. Those ag pieces have water that just flows right over them. So he's recommending a notice covenant for future property owners in that regard. The Trails Advisory Board is recommending, and I just want to go back here to the aerial. Well, first the Trails Advisory Board is recommending a 50-foot trail easement basically over here, and I think over here as well. This is consistent with what they recommended a long time ago, back 20 years ago. The intent, there is nothing else in place to make this happen. The intent was sort of to create some type of, or the ability to have some type of loop trail that would basically provide, some type of trail through and around the preserved ag land in and around this area. The problem that I'm having is that a lot of this land is preserved already. Well, all of this land is preserved. The legal documents are in place, and it's all mostly county development rights sale. We have looked at this before. The county does not alter their legal documents, their ag reserves. So I don't know to what extent this ultimately could be accomplished. Not to mention, I think that the town board in the development rights sale is going to have some say in what can and can't happen in here in terms of a trail easement. So my inclination, at least at this stage of the game, is that we don't really need to resolve it at this point. I would leave it as an open-ended issue. Should a trail easement be warranted as we get closer to the final stage, we could certainly look at it from a legal standpoint, within the legal documents. But I don't think we need to take a hard position just yet, because we're going to basically have preserved land. So if we really want to get some type of trail easement, we certainly can. Whether or not we want to, my opinion, let's see how things go as we get closer to the final stage. That's just my opinion, just having done this a long time. Let's see, bear with me. Trail. The Conservation Board, no issues here. They're supportive of the project and recommend, the innovative alternative system, which is a requirement now. But there are no, they do mention that there are wetlands on the opposite side of the railroad tracks that they would like shown on the plan. I don't think it's necessary because the 200-foot jurisdictional setback from that would bring the property or bring the jurisdictional into the reserved piece and not on the development properties. So we wouldn't be issuing any wetlands permits for the development properties, and the farmland's not going to be subject to wetland setbacks. However, if in the future we were looking at structures or a barn, we could certainly, and at that time, they would certainly have to show wetland setbacks if we were seeking permits for that. So I don't, they didn't make a huge ordeal out of it with the Conservation Board because it's on the other side of the railroad tracks. The Town Office of Fire Prevention does note that the fire hydrant is really far away from this property. So they are recommending that the applicant install a fire hydrant close to the property. I believe there's public water already there, so it would just be a matter of installing the fire hydrant. So, and I forgot to put that in my recommendation, so we will add that. And then the highway superintendent didn't have any comments. So just to go back to the map real quick. So in terms of my recommendations, the one recommendation that the applicant, to help maybe preserve some more of the views into the property. They're not great views. There are a lot of trees that line the property, but there are some views into the property. And maybe because of the engineer's concern, maybe we could take lot 1 and sort of shift it up here. That would open up the views a little bit more into this property. It would keep all of the lots closer to the development section on the adjacent property. And then we could probably even have a common driveway serving these 2 lots and reduce the curb cuts along Deerfield Road. So that was my one recommendation as it relates to the layout. Let me just get back there. And then so the first comment is the planning board supportive and prefers the reduced density conservation plan. Since it appears that there's going to be 2 legal instruments that preserve the land, obviously we want to make sure that those legal documents are consistent with their language, so that the 2 ag areas contain similar language, preserving the ag land for the intended purposes. Number 3 talks about the relocation of that lot, which we just discussed. A notice covenant, again, about the natural grade and the potential for flooding over the farm property. We've done this before. And obviously the engineer had some comments. So obviously we'll see on the final plans what drainage issues they've addressed. I'm recommending a common driveway serving the 2 lots that I showed you before, for, furthest to the adjacent properties. And then the 2 that would front directly on the road, I would recommend a common driveway serving those 2 lots as well. And not that Deerfield is a particularly, major thoroughfare, but it's very close to the railroad tracks. So maybe less driveways is better. This is the trail comment. And I think what we'll do is, if the board's recommendation, my recommendation is that we acknowledge the Trails Advisory's recommendations, and that we will consider it at the time of final application upon consultation with CPF and, the other agencies. The lot sizes on the map shall be calculated to include the area with and without the flag strips. Innovative wastewater treatment systems will be required. The phase 1A and 1B archaeological study will be required for the development area. Any encroachments from neighboring parcels shall be removed prior to final approval. The engineer noticed it. I think the Ag Advisory noticed it too. The problem is they're basing it on an aerial, and it's sort of hard to tell if they're encroachments. So the final map should show it, and if they are, they should be removed before we approve it. Obviously, the final application needs to have Suffolk County Health Department, and then the final application with all the requisite information. I would like to add the condition compliance with the fire district for installation of a fire hydrant for firefighting purposes, which should go in here as well.
Can I go back to the placement of the parcels? Can you
Sure.
go through that discussion? One of your concerns of putting lot 1 up to the side of lot 4 was to minimize traffic concerns, or?
No, it just, because Deerfield Road, you come over the tracks, this right now is an open vista. I just thought maybe moving lot 1 to up here would just open up some more of, or maintain some of the vista.
I have no problem with your theory. I'm just trying to understand also, would it make it less cumbersome on any of the existing houses? The building of a new house, would it give better spacing? I don't know what's opposite if you moved. I don't know how many houses you're affecting by having lot 1 where it is versus putting lot 1 up by lot 4. Does it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are residential properties up here.
That's what you can tell from what we're looking at right now.
What's that, Robin?
Where would it have lesser effect?
Yeah, it's I don't know that it would have lesser or more either, because the people over here are going to say, yeah, move it over here. The people over here would say, move it over here.
I'm just saying, I can't tell from the diagram we have here how many houses were affecting by the movement or the flipping of those properties.
It's basically
like
down here versus down up here.
Yeah,
It looks like a vacant piece.
that's
Yeah, right over here.
Yeah.
Yep.
So whoever builds there.
That's what I'm trying to ascertain. Would it be?
Yeah.
Are we?
Yeah.
I can't ascertain that from what I'm looking at, but that's why I'm questioning it. If it is now putting it opposite a vacant piece, that would be preferable. We would,
Sure.
affect neighborhood neighbors. If we can
It moves that lot away from the railroad tracks.
again, I think those,
Which is a positive for the potential new build.
which is, I think, part of those points should be put into the consideration or recommendation to move it.
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Does is Jim Walker from InterScience here? I don't know if he had any comments also.
Jim here?
Is Jim here, Charles?
Sorry, having trouble over here.
That's okay. That's okay.
We thought we lost you, Charles.
Nope. Internet.
On the chat, it says Jim is here.
He's here. Interscience.
Science.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is. Okay, coming in.
Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
All right. The reason why the lots are located along the road is that's the worst part of the farmland. When you have a sloped piece of property that slopes downhill, at the bottom you have fine silt that collects, and that soil is not as valuable as the soil up towards the top. Moving lots around to accommodate 3 lots on one side, 3 lots across the street doesn't really impact things very much. And probably the Halsey family would cooperate with you anyway. But when I was working for Ray back in 2002, Ray said the reason why they wanted the house lots on the street were the best farm soils are uphill. So I think that that's all the planning board really needs to know from me. And for Anthony's purposes, the public water isn't installed here. The reason why we're pursuing this project at this time is for 4 lots for the 4 Halsey families. This is property that's organically farmed by the Green Thumb Halsey family. And there are 4 kids, and each one of the 4 lots would go to one of the 4 families. That's probably all you need to know. It is costly to install public water. The main reason is it has to be jacked underneath the railroad tracks. It is the same problem that happened in 2002 and stopped the project in 2003. But CPF was very supportive, and we had a nice conversation, Lisa Combrink and I. And for what it's worth, Dave Wilcox checked the map in terms of the math, and it looks like we're okay with the math. The trail is something that the family has not desired in the past because they have a deer fence all the way around the farmland parcel. And the more you restrict the property and make them move the deer fence, the less farm open space that they have to use. And all of that property is used for truck farm crops that are sold across the street at the Green Thumb. So I think a trail probably is not a great idea for the family. A fire hydrant is going to be built by the Water Authority anyway. And a part of the planning process here was sell 5 development rights to the CPF fund and pay for the water main extension. And I believe that's the bulk of the issues that I might have. I don't see where there's anything else that's terribly exciting. Probably with the blessings of William Halsey, we'll simply shift the lots to address Anthony's suggestions, and we'll live with it, and that's okay. Probably really wouldn't like to install the trail. Yes, we have to install a fire hydrant, and yes, we have to jack the public water underneath the street. It's a fixed cost these days. It's different than it was in 2003. We have to pay a certain number of lots, which I believe is 6 or 7 times a certain dollar amount. And then the Water Authority has the ability to go in and jack the water underneath the railroad tracks. I think that's about it.
Okay. So with that, there's nothing else. I'll make the changes suggested and you could adopt the report.
So is Anthony, I mean, all we're going to say about the trail is that it was looked at and recommended, but we're not going to take a position on the trail. Because I think Jim, yeah.
I mean, I personally would like to revisit the lot being moved only because of the comment about the better soil is where we want to put the house. I mean, if this whole thing is for agriculture, should we, it seems Vista View Shed versus soil, I'm torn.
That's legit, Glorian. That's why I was sort of lukewarm in my recommendation, because the views aren't, they're not the most amazing views that we have of farmland in that area. There's a lot of shrubbery and trees that sort of block it, but your point is taken. I don't disagree with what Jim's saying. I could word it in such a way that, consideration for relocating, should it make sense, and that's fine. And then the applicant could discuss it with us when we get to the final.
Leave it to the applicant. I mean, it's a COS plan. When I look at that map, I think that moving the lot off the road is more value, but
But if they're willing to have the house on the road because they want to save the farmland, thank you.
Yeah, well, we leave it. We raise, planning board raised the question, right? You can look at it and we'll take a look at it then. It's good for me.
Anthony, do you have a soil survey?
I believe we do actually.
probably not going to reflect the actually on-site. They just do broad brush maps.
Yeah. So yeah, I could word that like that, and with that,
good.
I think that'll be good.
So we have the report ready to adopt then as amended?
Yes, we do.
Great. Do we have a motion to adopt?
Motion.
Motion by Glorian. Second by Robin. All in favor, aye. Opposed, abstentions. We have 5 yes, 1 absent.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, John. Jackie.
Dennis, so I have agenda item number 3, which is BH 680 LLC. So the applicant for that, Charles, is Wayne Bruin, John Borquin, and I believe the owner might also be available.
He's coming in.
Thank you. And I will share the screen.
Just turn it on and let it sit, and then I could have.
I'm sorry, I wanted to, give me one moment. Here we go. So I do apologize in advance because I'm taking this over for Matt. So I was really getting caught up in the last week or so, and also struggling to get all the referral comments back in the last week. So I do have a couple tweaks to make to the conditional approval that Wayne Bruin's office pointed out. But in a whole, we're looking at a 2-lot subdivision. So we're drawing a line right here. This is an existing home, which received variances for the size, which is approximately, I think it's like 43,000 square feet. And this will be creating a conforming lot to the southwest. So here's a zoom in of the property. You can see that this is vacant other than some minor sport courts and possible landscaping. This house is in the process of being landmarked. So this is also known as the Maples. People who live in the eastern portion of the town, I think, this is really quite a quality home, and the town board is considering landmarking it. And I believe they're actually considering taking an action on it next week with the town board. So let's see here. And then this is the subdivision map layout where you can see where the existing structures are. This is on the corner of Halsey Cook Lane and Scuttle Hole Road. And then it's 2 trees is over here. And this is a little small, I don't know if you can see the key map, but there is a small extension of Cook's Lane that meets up with Hayground Road. So with this, we do have the draft final conditional approval before us, and it received variances for the configuration and for the lot size, which has the historic home on it. So as you can see here, lot 1 is 87,120, lot 2 is 43,382 and contains the existing house. I noted the ZBA decision. This did receive approval from the Health Department on September 10th, 2021. It is a type 1 action. We coordinated with the ZBA, and the ZBA actually adopted a negative declaration by resolution dated July 2nd, 2020. The public hearing was conducted at the pre-application stage in February of 2020. And although the proposed lot layout does not meet zoning, the applicant was granted variances by the ZBA, and the intent here is noted for the preservation of the historic home called now known as the Maples on Lot 2. So I have the ZBA decision in here. Let me see. So here's the ZBA decision here, which basically you can see grants the variances. And this decision was conditioned upon the designation of the existing dwelling by the town board as a historic landmark prior to the signature of the final subdivision map by the planning board, the filing of a covenant on Lot 2 prior to signature of the final plat by the planning board, subject to a formal approval by the town attorney's office stating that the dwelling has been landmarked and the building shall not be demolished, removed, or raised, or that any construction, repairs, or renovations to the dwelling must be reviewed and approved by the Southampton Town Landmark and Historic District Board or its successor. And then 3, any recommendations made by the Landmark and Historic District Board in their report to the town board, including but not limited to the enhanced structure visibility from foliage and landscape plantings at the corner Prospect and the Faux Gate area. So we are requesting that they have proof of the landmarking. I did, Wayne mentioned that I didn't have it as a condition. I only had a covenant. So I did actually modify that to have it as a condition as well as a covenant. One thing that I wanted to talk to the planning board that I'm recommending is that the vegetation along Scuttle Hole Road and approximately 30 feet to the north on Cook's Lane have a reduction of that front yard vegetation of 4 feet so that people can view the house from the public right of way. Since it is being designated a landmark, I think the public has a right to be able to view it. I did want to discuss the gate entrance. So in reading through the landmarks and historic report, the maple sign was actually erected on the gate, which I'll go back to the map. But it's actually, it's not really, even though people know it as the Maples, let me zoom in here. So it's actually these 2 concrete posts. I thought maybe, we should consider, if we can retain those posts or at least note them more significantly other than concrete posts, because they do have some historic significance of the property being named the Maples. So I did want to talk about that further. Go back to full screen mode. Sorry, I feel like it's a little delayed. And then the application is in substantial agreement with the adopted pre-application report, and a hearing was held on this on February 20th, and most recently at the final application stage on October 14th, and we did not receive any comments from the public on this application. Number 9 is regarding the park area, and I did make a mistake. The park fee for the Bridgehampton district is actually $25,000 per lot, but as Dennis is well aware of, the 2 lot subdivisions actually are entitled to a flat fee. So the fee would be $2,500 because there is one existing house. So I am making that correction, and that's noted on my copy. And then the other one is, because it's located in the aquifer protection, but it's been previously farmed and developed, I wanted the planning board to consider, which is consistent with the conservation board comments, that the significant trees within the front yard be noted on the survey and consider a tree preservation plan. Fire prevention comments, they stated that they are not within an area served by public water, although we just received new information from the applicant's surveyor. And I have to admit, I measured that there was one hydrant that was down Scuttle Hole Road, approximately 700 feet away from the corner of the intersection. And then there was another one in excess of 1,200 feet, which made me, understand that the fire prevention might in fact need it, but we are just informed and also just received comments from the Bridgehampton Fire District that they have no requirement and that there is enough public water and hydrants within the area. And there's actually a new hydrant that was just very recently installed, which I actually have and I can show to you. Let's see. right here. So we just received this from the applicant surveyor and from the attorney's office, which shows that the new hydrant that we weren't aware of was actually located right here. So with that, I will remove the recommendations and the requirement and conditions for a new hydrant. At first, it was at a terminus right here, and we thought that it was necessary to bring it up to here to at least get a hydrant here. We were aware of this hydrant and this hydrant, but this is a brand new hydrant. So that will serve the new home being created. So that is good to add into the record. And I will amend the resolution accordingly. As for, let's see here, the town engineer, they did have requirement that it's not subject to an application fee, and they recommended a 3-inch drainage, which is standard. Let me see here. Oh, and he did recommend approval. The highway department had no objections to the plan. If you look closely on the plan, there is a corner radius. I apologize because I'm just kind of getting brought up to speed with this, but right here, there was a corner radius. I thought that was being offered as part of this application, but the applicant's attorney just gave me the deed that was actually already given to the town for to smooth out that intersection of Halsey Cook Lane and Scuttle Hole Road. So that is a good thing that we already have that. And so here is, we also did get comments from the Trails Advisory Board. So they found no trail implications in this location. Conservation Board noted that it's outside of wetlands jurisdiction, that the track is within the Aquifer Protection Overlay District. However, it's exempted as the clearing on site predates the effective date of the chapter, which is April 14th, 1984. There are several significant trees, they noted, with a diameter or breast height of 18 inches or greater, located within the required front yard of proposed lot 2, as well as within the road right-of-way. Some of these trees have been pruned, limbed due to damage by English ivy, which weighs down the branches and adds excess moisture to the bark and outcompetes the tree for nutrients. These trees need to be identified on the survey and preserved as they add significant value to the historic setting of the existing dwelling. And additionally, consistent with the Conservation Board's February 12, 2020 advisory report, it needs to be conditioned upon submission of a tree preservation plan. We did not get any comments from the Ag Advisory Board, and their meeting was actually canceled in November, but previously they stated that there was no need for this application, which I've noted here from January 29, 2020, that there is no active farming operation or agricultural reserve involved or proposed as part of this application, and provided no additional comment regarding the application.
May I ask a question about the clearing?
Sure.
Are both lots already completely cleared?
Mostly, yeah. Yeah, they just have some significant trees in the front here and some landscaping in the front.
And the other one is totally cleared already?
This one is, majority of it's cleared. It's got some passive, re-veg here in the front, but you can see here, this is all maintained. This is a little bit more natural, but it is cleared.
So there'll be no clearing restrictions on these properties at all? Or can we do anything to encourage anything on?
Well, so that was my one, that was my one idea for a tree preservation plan, is that if we can keep the significant large trees, we all know that a mature tree does a better job at, helping the environment and also keeps the character of the area. So that was my thought. If we could do a tree preservation plan, then at least that keeps some, holds some of the intent of the aquifer protection. But technically this is exempt because it has been historically cleared. This was all farmland with an old house. This house dates back to probably even, the location probably was there even before the, 17 and 18, probably 1800s, 1900s, but this one was reconstructed, I think, in 1920, I believe, from the landmarks report. There are some trees along here and some, hedge line as well, but, it doesn't meet the standard of native forest vegetation. Robin?
I wasn't so much concerned. I appreciate what you're trying to do with the trees to affect the lot where the current house is. I'm looking at the other lot. Is there anything we can, you said there is some natural coming back. Is there anything we can do with that, or is it going to stay without any?
I think it was actively farmed though, wasn't it?
It was historically actively farmed.
But still now, how long hasn't it been farmed? Has anything grown back?
I mean, what you're seeing here is probably some, if you give me a moment, I can look it up on ArcGIS.
What
Give
I'm
me
trying
one.
to do, I'm trying to see if there's anything we can do to,
Yeah, give me one moment. Let me just bring it up. I can give you a Google Street View, which might give you a better
It would
idea.
have come back, Robin, I would think would be like successional growth, you know.
yeah,
Russian
that's what I'm
olives.
asking. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not any type of, you know.
All right,
native
so here,
vegetation.
to give you an idea, this is 1962.
Mhm.
So you can see the home was there and it was all farmed. You know, I think the home goes even back prior 1930, you can see here, although the quality is not good. So 84, this was when it was farmed completely. Then, sorry, here, the 2001, good indication, still being actively farmed. 2008, it was kind of left alone, but it doesn't look like it has any significant tree vegetation here. No, and so 2014, you can see it's starting to be re-maintained, but no tree coverage really there. 2018, it's further maintained with a little bit more lawn and landscaping. And then this is your most recent aerial that we have from the spring. I'll do a quick Google Street View just so you can get an idea of what we're looking at, but you know.
I agree with you, Dennis. I was just hoping
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I just want to comment on how fabulous the GIS system is.
Yeah, and I mean, so looking at this, I did do a quick Google Street View and I drive by all the time. There's nothing really significant here that, you know, if there was a stand of trees and it was disturbed in the back, maybe we could do a roadside buffer, but you can see here, most of this is just a little overgrown, invasive. There's nothing, a real quality of forest. But I mean, Robin, you know, if this was to be left alone, the aquifer protection would automatically, so if they leave it alone and it revegetates after 20 years, then it would automatically, those restrictions would be imposed based upon that, but.
And how many years into it would we say we are already into?
I think
Hasn't been left alone.
It hasn't been left alone. Okay.
It hasn't really been left alone. It's been landscaped, it's been mowed. I mean, there's no significant.
Sorry, I withdraw my comments. I don't have 20 years.
No, it's okay. It's a good thing to add. All right, so getting back, let's see. So I just stated that ZBA's condition was a covenant to ensure future property owners are put on notice of the resident on lot 2. The vegetation, this is the area where I was asking for the vegetation to be reduced in height to 4 feet to allow visibility of the structure from mainly from Scuttle Hole Road and just a little bit along Cook's Lane. So just so you guys can visualize, I feel like my computer's slow today. I just wanted to show you what I was envisioning. See here. Sorry, that was on the wrong attachment. So what I was asking for was, you know, 4 feet along here and then just a little bit 30 feet up here so that most travelers are going east-west along Scuttle Hole Road. So they'd be able to have a view of the historic landmark structure.
You really can't see it that clearly now.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, I grew up here and when I went to visit family in Bridgehampton, I always remember looking at that house and, you know, it was one of the only large houses along that section. So, I mean, it had a presence. I think recently there's arborvitaes that have been planted that have, you know, screened out the house. But it'd be nice to get the visual from the public right of way. Let me go back to the comments just so we can get through that. Ag Advisory Board, no significant comments. And the Southampton Trails Advisory Board had no trail implications. And the landmarks basically stated that they received the October 21st referral, but basically that it's already in the works, and they made recommendations to the town board for the landmarking of the property. So this was the formal resolution to the town board, which was dated October 19th, 2021. So I wanted that to be noted that they did find in favor of landmarking this property. And it does really have a very rich history, which is very interesting. I would recommend that you guys take a look at the landmarks report because it is very interesting. It has a lot of history going back to World War I, and even, before that with local farm families. It is very interesting. So they basically support the landmarking, and that was their comments. They basically forwarded those to us for the final conditional approval. Health Department, we didn't receive anything from them, but they did offer their approval on September 10th with covenants, which is noted in the beginning of our findings. So if the planning board's okay, I can just go through the basic conditions. Number one was for considering a tree preservation plan, noting the large caliper trees. Number two recommendation was vegetation in the front to be reduced in height to 4 feet. The compliance with fire prevention, we don't really need to deal with that now because we received new information from the fire district this morning that they had no additional need for water mains or fire hydrant. And there's actually that new fire hydrant that we just showed you. So I'm going to be removing 3 and 4. I am going to replace that because we did have, just as a condition, that the landmarking of the home takes place prior to signature of the map. So essentially like the new 3 will be a condition regarding the landmarking and proof of that with the town board via resolution. But I did have in here already the covenant. So I'm adding in as 3, and then I'll remove the yellow ones because they don't need to provide a hydrant because of the new hydrant we were made aware of. Standard notes on the plan, and sorry, I feel like my computer's like slightly delayed today and I'm moving too fast for it. Okay. So then I'm also going to modify here. The 25,000 is actually the flat fee of 2,500. So I'm just noting that on the record. So covenants, I have no further subdivision due to the creation of an undersized lot previously granted by the zoning board of appeals, no lot line modification without planning board approval. All utilities shall be installed underground, no new utility poles, that the dwelling has been designated as a town landmark and existing residence structure shall not be demolished, removed, raised, or augmented, and that any construction, repairs, or renovations proposed to the dwelling must be reviewed and approved by the Southampton Town Landmark and Historic District Board or its successor in the interest to an intent of preserving the outer facade. So I just noticed a typo. And then all landscaping in the front yard of lot 2 only shall, and extending, so this is basically along Scuttle Hole Road and extending 30 feet to the north along Halsey Cooks Lane, with the exception of deciduous trees, shall be required and maintained at a maximum height of 4 feet for the visibility and landmark of the historic structure from the right of way of Scuttle Hole Road. Vegetative screening along the western boundary of lot 2 running north-south, and the vegetative screening shall be permitted along the eastern boundary fronting on Halsey Cook Lane. So that way they can have some privacy on the west and east essentially, because the side yard is mainly going to be where they're enjoying like a backyard. Tree preservation plan, we can discuss that on lots 1 and 2. It's really mainly the trees on lot 2. No driveway or vehicular access within 50 feet of the intersection. They comply with that now, but it's just to make sure that we don't run into a circle driveway situation where it, basically makes the driveway too close to that intersection. Installation of water mains, that's going to be removed. 3-inch drainage as was recommended by engineering, and then advisory covenant that they are close to farmland. Just to the north is an existing ag reserve, and there's customary, nuisance and noise and odor associated with that. And then this is going to be taken out, the deed of dedication for the corner radius, as I thought that was a new proposal. So we have a deed of dedication for that already that I was given. So standard title certification, mortgage consent, and town attorney, town board acceptance. So I can actually make this also town board acceptance of the landmarking. But other than that, I believe the applicant has some comments.
So good afternoon, board members. Wayne Bruin, O'Shea, Marcinsick and Bruin for the applicant. I believe Mr. Morrow is also listening in, as well as my associate, John. I appreciate Jackie jumping in here sort of last minute and taking over for Matt. As you recall, we had reviewed this at a pre-application stage. When we got this report or resolution yesterday, we were quite surprised with some of the conditions, which as we've been able to address those with Jackie, for example, pulling up the 1982 deed for the corner radius. I would just note on that, Jackie, we would want the map to change the notation regarding that and actually take off that so that there's no confusion as well. And I would assume you would want us to show the new fire hydrant, which is to the west, also on the map. So they would be additional conditions.
Yeah, Wayne, just to clarify, we can just show can we note the existing deed? So if anyone needs to find it in the future?
Well, you can, but we want to make it clear that there's no dedication necessary there.
Yeah, no, I just am asking for the note to be clarified because that's
Everything.
probably, yeah, okay.
So this application is all driven by the landmarking, and we appreciate Jackie adding that condition. It is scheduled for a public hearing next Tuesday in front of the town board. This board adopted a resolution recommending landmarking. The landmarks board has looked at this 2 or 3 times throughout this process. One, they produced a report with respect to an addition that Mr. Morrow was going to make to the building to make sure it wouldn't jeopardize landmarking, which was very helpful. And 2, when the zoning board considered this. And during that time, when the report was prepared early on in 2019, there was a recommendation from the landmarks board that had to do with the visibility. And I believe the discussion and the conditions regarding the vegetation along the frontage is of great concern of our clients and frankly objects to the conditions as proposed. But the thought, there's nothing in the record other than the landmarks board's recommendation as to enhancing the structure visibility. And that language in 2019 stated, enhancing structure visibility from the foliage and landscape plantings at the corner prospect and faux gate area is desirable for landmark qualification. So they specifically addressed the corner area. What's important about that is the zoning board incorporated that same language in their decision. And what happened after that, Mr. Morrow met with the landmarks board representatives and actually took out vegetation on the property. And since then has discussed it with the landmarks board, and they have no further recommendations of doing anything with the vegetation on the property. They find it acceptable as it exists. So the recommendation that is coming here seems to be coming from Jackie alone and not the landmarks board. There's nothing else in the record. Our client, it requires the privacy that's been there with this site, and to go out there and take the vegetation down to 4 feet is not something he's willing to accept. So we would ask that that condition be struck. As far as the trees, I would hope the board, we have some pictures that we took today to understand what trees might be 18 inches in diameter. First of all, there are a few trees that are out in the street right away, which we have no jurisdiction over whatsoever. We can't touch them, we can't condition them. Although people think it's their trees, they can do that. So with respect to that, there's one on the Scuttle Hole Road side towards the western part of lot 2. And then there was a few on the north, on Halsey Cook Lane, north of the driveway that are out in the street right away. There is one large pine tree, which is just to the southeast of the house. We don't see that as a native species or anything, and it's rather large and probably near the end of its lifespan. There are a couple other trees which have been totally stripped of their branches, and is ivy, as Marty Shea has indicated. That would be, I think, one or two in the northeast corner of the property. As far as the south part of the property, the front yard, which is what the resolution talks about, only to the southwest of the property are 3 or 4 maples that might qualify. And so the question really, and they're near their lifespan as well. So the question really is, what is it that we're trying to achieve with this tree preservation plan? Our client is willing to go and at least locate them, but there may be some that we want to make sure that if something happens, they die in the next few years, that or a storm knocks them down, that he's not required to do anything, and that's totally appropriate. So, so we would need some clarification on that. So with respect to all the other conditions, we fully accept them. Just some clarification on the covenants. Jackie, is we would think all the utilities underground would only qualify for lot 1. I don't know exactly the status, but they're probably overhead for the existing house.
Yeah, Wayne, I can change that to no all new utilities.
Only the new ones. And,
Yeah.
and then, so the request from the applicant is with respect to this proposal to reduce the vegetation in the front yard down to 4 feet. That would be a significant undertaking and would jeopardize the privacy that has been benefited from this, and it wouldn't be in accordance with the Landmarks Board's recommendation at all. So,
Wayne, I have to agree with you on the vegetation. I actually took a run out there before the meeting, and one of the reasons why this house is so beloved is I was surprised how visible it was. Coming from, I first went up to the pass and then went around the loop, the circle and Mitchell's, and came back, and it's got a high degree of visibility. I don't think we should be putting disincentives for people to come forward and landmark property. Scuttle Hole Road is almost it's a main thoroughfare now. It's a highway. Especially in the afternoon and in the morning commute, it's bumper to bumper nonstop vehicles, and to require someone to take away any type of buffer that's there. But perhaps a reasonable compromise is we could ask that no additional screening be installed other than that's what's there. So in other words, they couldn't
I think
completely.
that's reasonable. It's going to point out that my understanding, part of the vegetation that was cleared out was some trees and other vegetation, particular on Halsey Cook Lane, where there is a much greater visibility. So when you're coming from the east, you see it more so looking towards the property to the east. When you're along Scuttle Hole Road, yes, and that's the concern of the applicant is the traffic that is on Scuttle Hole Road, and the privacy, noise issues.
Noise, dust, and everything else.
Yeah.
With regard to the trees, I've never been, this issue of identifying trees has come up on a number of applications, and it's always been a quandary, because if you start identifying individual trees on a property, and a windstorm or disease takes out a few of the trees, all of a sudden the applicant is in a violation. Probably Robin can appreciate this more than anyone. You have attorneys now going, well, you have an approval for 11 trees here, but there's only 7. What happened? And everything comes to a halt. Correct me if I'm wrong, Robin. And we got to run to a title company and everything else, and sometimes back to the town. And so, I mean, routinely we establish non-disturbance buffers primarily for ecological purposes, but to try and certainly pick out trees for preservation, it's going to be the property owner's best interest to retain those trees. They're quite an enhancement for the property. They add value. I couldn't imagine any property owner coming in and taking out, other than it's diseased or something like that. I don't think it's something the town we should really be imposing from my standpoint.
Our client, as I said, met with the representatives of Landmarks and went and cleared vegetation that they discussed. And of course, if they wanted more, he would address that. But I think they were satisfied with what he did take out, and he's happy with what's there now and has no intention of going any further. But he doesn't want to have the restriction, or as you said, I didn't even think of the potential title issues. Is what would be the process that if a storm did take out a tree, that it's documented that the tree is no longer there, so it doesn't become a title issue if someone's looking at a covenant.
Right. But I think your client should be commended for coming forward and landmarking a beautiful structure. It's really a public amenity. Any other board members have any feelings?
I agree with you, Dennis. I hate putting restrictions on it that are going to cause problems later on in implementation, and we have had problems where a storm takes down trees, and I have clients calling me up and saying, now what do I do? And so I don't know if we're prepared in that, but how do we balance out, I think, two issues with this property. One is the ability for people, I understand it's become a busy street, but to be able to appreciate the house, vista-wise, and how do we protect trees without becoming overburdensome? Is there something in between we can do?
Well, one of the solutions I thought was maybe to preclude additional screening. What's there is there. Just so some property owner doesn't come in and do a wall of arborvitae or something like that. And we could certainly notate the existing hedges and, on the survey and lock that in, but we wouldn't want to see additional screening. I mean, Wayne, has your client considered that, or?
Obviously he's listening in, and I can probably give him a ring or see if we can have him join. But the survey does show the existing location of the hedge, the existing hedges on the survey. So I think that's easy to. I don't think he'd have a problem. Again, the plan is not to do anything further than what's there. Mm-hmm. If Jackie blows it up, you can sort of see there is a line showing the hedges. And there's an old fence in that hedge as well, 4 foot.
Yeah, I noticed that. 4 foot.
All right.
See, the dashed line is the hedge, and there's a slight berm as you go towards that. And that's all historical. That isn't recent at all.
There's a berm there.
Yeah, it's about 2 feet.
Oh, it's 2 feet. Okay.
Yeah, it's not really.
All right.
It sort of just leads up to that fence and hedge, back of the fence and hedge.
The house is surprisingly visible, and you're coming actually from both directions. You really get a nice view. I mean, maybe it's the time of year, it's December, but even.
I think so. If you look at the and I know John, my associate's on. John, I don't know if you have pictures, or maybe Jackie can, if you get from the other lot, the vacant lot.
I can share my screen with the photos.
Yeah, I mean, this is a Google Street View. I don't know the exact date of it, though.
So you can see that tree right in the corner is out in the street right away. We don't have any jurisdiction over that. And then the other tree is also in the right of way. And then up by the mailbox on Halls of Cook, you could see other trees. But if you go the other direction, Jackie, you see those line of maples that are behind the gate kind of area?
Yes, right here.
No, those.
Yeah.
So they, during the summer season, they have leaves on them. So when you're coming from the west looking east, they do sort of block the view. But these are also the large maples that you want to preserve. So there's a balance. And then you do see that one large pine tree, which is, probably near the end of its life. That clearly was an ornamental many years ago. That it's just sort of an odd thing there, totally.
Where is the house? I do not see a house. All I see is a line of.
If you look at it from the
Right,
west,
it's right there. So I'll try to wrap you guys around. So
I have 4 or 5 photos which I took this morning, which I could share also that give.
So here's the house from the corner. There, this is from Scuttle Hole, like if you're looking west.
Yeah.
And you see that evergreen blocks a good part of the facade. I mean, to me.
Oh, and this might be an older picture. This is where you can get a glimpse of it, and then you can see it now more so, I feel like, from Cook's.
Yes,
You know what?
that's where all the trees were taken out.
Here, maybe if I go further down Scuttle Hole. So now this is where you can see the top of the house right there.
yeah.
See, if you want us to preserve that, that pine tree is an 18-inch diameter tree that you would want preserved. But on the other hand, to me, that's one that the client probably, for even safety purposes, might want to remove.
Yeah.
It would probably open up the view of that house more too.
Yeah.
You said your client wants it down or wants to keep it?
Well, at the moment, he hasn't talked about it, but I think he would want to at least reserve the right to do that.
John, I'll give you the opportunity to share yours.
Sure, thank you, Jackie.
Would you consider putting a cell receptor on top of that?
Don't go there.
Like one of those stealth, you see those stealth trees.
Yeah, those fake trees.
Yeah, those fake trees. I think we have one of those coming up.
Find the fake tree and the real tree.
So they're the maples on the west side.
Yeah.
You can see they're, maples get to a point and they get straggly like this. Still, they have a few years left, but during the summer, they will block the view of the house coming from the west. But that's,
Yeah, and Wayne, I wasn't.
You were trying to save those on the other hand.
So now here's a vista looking from the public right of way on the Cook's Lane side, standing on the white line, if you will, side of the road.
But there you could see that one pine tree, and there is another tree right there that's totally covered with ivy. And you can see there's no branches or otherwise. Ecologically, I'm not sure, or from a historic standpoint, whether that tree is worth saving at all. When you're on Halsey Cook, you get a tremendous view. It's just from Scuttle Hole, right in the front of Scuttle Hole, where they have, the prior owner actually planted all those evergreens.
And this is from close to the Jehovah's Witness Hall on the south side of the road, looking northeast.
Going east.
Yes.
Going east, yes. So in those, that's the line of maples that you want to sort of preserve. So if they weren't preserved, then
You have a better
it
view.
would provide a better view.
Yeah, Wayne, I wasn't so concerned with the north-south, I guess I'll call it, on the western boundary, but more just along Scuttle Hole Road and wrapping around the corner. But you're saying, and like, I wasn't aware that you talked with Landmarks and Historic Board about the corner plantings, which give a window to the structure, essentially.
Yeah, and yeah, you weren't part of this process, and I don't know if Matt was either, but all that, and that's why you don't see that same recommendation that the Landmarks Board had in 2019 with their current recommendation to the town board.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm just, if possible, if it's landmarked, I think as members of the public should be able to take a glance. So I was thinking more along Scuttle Hole Road where there's a wall of arborvitaes, but it's at the board's discretion.
We're just glad it's being landmarked. It's.
How does everyone want to proceed?
I think maybe Phil, from a philosophical standpoint, it has to be a line where government ends and private concerns begin, and when you start to enter properties and micromanage specific aspects of vegetation. I mean, the ZBA could have conditioned that, and they didn't. And I don't know, knowing what I know about Scuttle Hole Road, I would hate to see a buffer, brought down. Just it's really those buffer, that vegetation is important. Keep the noise and the dust away from that front yard. That's my feeling. I mean,
Dennis, do you have a height that you would be willing to say you can put up a buffer, but not more than X amount of feet or something? Or
well, it's hard. My thoughts were just to preclude additional buffering for the purposes of blocking view shed and stuff. What's there is there, but we wouldn't want to see someone like putting high vegetation in front of, let's say, this view.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of it practically. If you don't put exact numbers, if things die off, what do they replace it with?
Well, they wouldn't be able to establish what's the language they use in Sagaponic? The planting of landscaping material for the purpose of blocking view shed.
I don't know.
That's sort of would be suggest 4 feet.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get it. I'm trying to take what you're saying in consideration, that you don't want to make it impossible for a landowner to maintain his property.
Right.
And trying to balance that with keeping and maintaining a view shed. So is there saying
4 feet seems I think it's a workable number,
Jackie?
So you're saying no new vegetation that exceeds 4 feet.
Right. That's sort of a compromise, allowing what's there to remain, but any additional plantings shall be maintained within a 4 foot height. That's a language because it has to be maintained at that height.
Wayne, do you think the trees, the existing arborvitaes, could be trimmed more like a hedgerow, like so that they were more like 8 feet?
I don't know that, Mike. I think probably a landscaper could do that, but some of those are rather large. They're nowhere near 4 feet at this point. They're well.
Yeah, I was thinking like, what if we did it like 8 feet? Because then you would still be able to, from a distance, see over it, but it would still provide immediate screening. Just an idea.
Again, I don't have the expertise to say that. Someone would have to go out there and look at that, see if it doesn't jeopardize the plant. So.
Can we take a better look at this maybe, because it doesn't sound like it's something we can solve sitting here right now. I think we know what the concern is. We want to maintain a view shed, but we don't want to overburden the landowner or make it impossible for him to maintain his property. Can we take a look at it again and see what kind of terminology we need? Because I don't think it keeps going in different directions.
Any thoughts?
Well,
I believe we might be at an action deadline, but I mean, I'd be happy to look at this next week, but that's up to Wayne if he will consent to that.
Well, I wanted, I can ask my client, obviously, but the question really is he doesn't want to really do anything with the vegetation there. And so what you're asking though is if possible, could he reduce the height to, 8 or 10 feet on those, and if we could put language in there, if feasible, or, from a planting standpoint, I don't know what the right terminology, that it cannot, and if they can, if it's possible that he can do that and then not jeopardize the health of the plants, then we're willing to reduce the height to 8 feet.
Did you go on a conference with him and we circle back to this, or do you have him available for?
I can call him up, if you want to call us back again. I can do that.
Yeah, I mean, we could jump over this. I think this is the only open item. Everything else looks good, right, Jackie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we would eliminate the tree preservation plan and then just work on what's comfortable for everyone for
about that front buffer. Why don't we do that? We do have a couple of other,
That's what I'm suggesting. I don't like when we keep going back around on.
Yeah. No, good point, Robin. Good point.
That's fine. So we can table this. Wayne, if you can circle back or just let me know.
I can,
Yeah,
I can
jump into the chat
raise
when
my hand and see.
yeah, wave your hand in the chat.
I got other things on the calendar, so you can squeeze me in then.
Yeah, let's get something clean.
Yeah, and I'm a little uncomfortable with the height stipulation without knowing what the current height is.
Yeah.
You know, I just think that would just be an arbitrary number and kind of unfair to the homeowner.
Yeah, let's clean it up. And
There is a picture that Jackie showed you. You could see the height of the existing.
all right, why don't you guys work on it and let's bring it back
Okay,
and see if we can resolve it. The
That's
verbiage.
fine.
I'll be back.
Okay. What about Jackie? Are you ready to go with Vreeland, number 4?
Yes, I am. Yeah. Give me one moment. Oh, and Charles, if you can let in Madeline Van John. This is a pretty simple one.
Don't say that.
No, it truly is. So when we adopted the pre-application report in August, actually, Robin, you had asked, we didn't get comments from the Bridgehampton Fire District yet. I was then able to get comments from the fire district. So I alerted, actually the attorney contacted me to see if we got them. And I was like, oh yes, in fact we did. So we both decided and agreed that it would be proper to amend the pre-application report. But I just wanted to show you here because this is a large property. It also has frontage on Daylily Lane. There was just this summer or early fall, a fire well that was put in right in the vicinity where the hand is. So with that information, the Bridgehampton Fire District said that well right here would serve this property adequately. So I just wanted to clarify the record and bring that back. And this is the letter that we received saying that the board has agreed the electric well to be installed on Loper's Path before Mill Path would be adequate to cover the plans for 85 Daylily Lane. So I just amended the pre-application report. Sorry, it's going very.
Well, that means that it is definitely going to go in and it's conditional that.
Oh, it's actually already in, so it's already serving the area. So no, so we had said contact the Bridgehampton Fire District to see what they need. There's no need for that anymore because they offered their comments that what's there has been recently installed and will serve the subject property.
Okay.
So I added that referral in, and then I added and I took out and then I added that the Bridgehampton District has said that will suffice. So
great.
nice and clean. Yeah.
I like clean.
Yep. So if the planning board is comfortable, I can move forward and we can adopt that amended report.
Okay, very good.
Move it.
Oh, motion by Robin.
Second.
By Gloria, and all in favor, aye, opposed, abstentions. We have 5 yes. Anthony, are you ready to go with JAB? You
Yes,
are muted.
I'm
Okay.
good. No problem. Let me get to my screen.
Share.
Stuff, yeah. Get rid of that. Okay. So this is the Lexus dealership on County Route 39. Everybody knows the story. Highway Business Zoning District. Did a pre-submission conference on this. Like we get with a lot of these car dealerships, the 15,000 square foot maximum building size always come back to us and ultimately to the zoning board. So that's the case here, is that the Lexus dealership was looking to do a one-story addition right over here, and then to enclose the existing display area and service drive over here, and then to have some more car storage back here. And so that's basically it. And so they were successful with the Zoning Board of Appeals to get that additional square footage, which brings it up to, I believe, 17,000 and change. So more than what they would normally be permitted. The applicant did at the time ask for some outdoor display within the 50-foot buffer. The planning board didn't seem inclined to do that, so that was removed from the plan, and we put a condition in the resolution. Let's So just to remind the board, they went back to the ARB. They had made some changes after the pre-submission conference, but basically the architecture is going to mimic what was there. And so my apologies for not doing a staff report. In this case, no special exception criteria, and the engineering basically signed off on it. So because I lost some time last week, I just have the resolution for you, but it's pretty straightforward. So, so we know it was in addition to the Lexus dealership. I do want to just point out one thing that I should have said is that there is a cross access back here that was established from the previous site plan, and one to the east. We don't have one to the west yet, but we do note that should this access be opened up, then this all the cars obviously have to go to make way for the cross access. So that was the other discussion that you had with the applicant at the time. So this was an unlisted action, and back in January, the planning board issued a negative declaration for this. We had a public hearing for this in October, and it was followed by a 30-day written comment period. No comments were received. The application was submitted to other involved agencies, and we got back comments from the engineer, who only had a few minor changes to the plan, which we've incorporated into the resolution here. The office, the Southampton Office of Fire Prevention, also had a couple of comments relating to signage and fire zone access, which also included in the resolution as conditions. The Architectural Review Board approved the elevations at their meeting. I graded out because I forgot to put it in and I forgot the meeting date. So I'll add that. And then I just have the conditions here. It's pretty straightforward. The compliance with the requirements of the town engineer, so those changes to the site plan, the requirements of the Office of Fire Prevention as well. I had them put the lighting detail on there only because there was one additional lighting pole going on while they shifted the parking. So they put it on the plan showing that it complies, and they show that it's not going to exceed a height of 10 feet. I just want them to note that the correlated color temperature does not exceed 3,000 Kelvin. And then I want to note on the map that says that the 50-foot transition buffer shall remain free from outdoor display. Have that noted on the plan. Then the general conditions, any new signage to be approved by the planning board, the HVAC and mechanical systems to be screened so they're not visible. Any additional lighting would be subject to planning board approval. The arrangement of the pre-construction meeting with the town engineer. Prior to signature, a payment of the engineering fee. I grade this out because the applicant may have actually paid this already, in which case I'll just take it out of the resolution. Another condition, this was noted in the pre-submission conference. If the cross-access in the rear is going to be implemented by the town, again, when the property to the west comes in for site plan approval, the applicant should give us, as a condition of this approval, a detailed plan for establishing the cross-access and what they plan to do with the storage if they're going to lose that space. So, so that was something that was mentioned by the planning board in the pre-submission conference. So we made it a condition here. The affidavit, as we normally require, and then the plans for signature. There was no changes to the site landscaping because all the improvements were over existing improvements, and just that additional lighting. So there really wasn't much more to the site plan than that. Didn't know if the planning board had any other questions.
The plan that has to be given by the applicant if cross access is going to be implemented by the town, is that a plan that is submitted now and attached to this?
Will be, yes, it should be submitted to you prior to getting the maps signed and submitted and reviewed by the planning board before we sign the plans.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yep.
Anthony, can I just note something about that?
Sure.
Okay, Mike Shano from InterScience on behalf of the applicant. If the cross-access easement is activated by the town, we will just be abandoning those additional car storage parking spaces in the back. I believe I submitted either an email or a letter to that effect at some point in the past. I could not locate it right now, but I can provide a letter to that effect so that the planning board has it in the file.
Yep, that would be great. We want something so we know that the cars aren't going to be jammed in spaces that they weren't accounted for in the property, sloppy. So that would be good. I appreciate that. Anything else, or
For action, Anthony, is just John for approval of conditions, then, correct?
Yep.
Okay, very good. Do we have a motion for approval?
Motion.
Motion by Gloria, second by Zuccarelli. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? 5 yes, 1 absent.
I'll just
very much.
Screen real quick for the next one.
Aquaterra.
Yep, Aquaterra. This actually wasn't mine, but I took it over. A couple of years ago, the planning board set a maintenance bond for the landscaping and revegetation of this property. Obviously, the landscaping was installed because you set the maintenance bond. It's been 2 years. I have gone out. I've checked. The landscaping is still in place and looks good. So I'm recommending that we recommend the release of the $6,000 maintenance bond.
Very good. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Gloria,
Second.
second by Robin. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? 5 yes, 1 absent. Is Claire available or?
I am. I'm
All
here.
right. Claire, are you going to go in order?
Yes. So my next one is GTB Real Estate Group. We looked at this staff report
Oh, yeah.
at the last meeting, and some concerns about the lighting came up. So the applicant has looked at that. So before I go into, I think I just review the resolution. I'm gonna have the applicant speak to this. I see the applicants here. I'm just looking for Kyle Collins to come in.
Okay.
Yes, please. And since then, we've had the ARB. They've approved the project. So everything's in line with that. The town engineers approved it. But an issue that's come up. So at the pre-submission report, planning board getting a handle on this use, there's some talk about a service window. You could sometimes that happens at like a mini golf. You just walk up and you pay and then you go, right? They hand you a couple, you grab a club and a golf ball and then you go. So I think the board was discouraging that. And I'm not quite sure why, but maybe related to the food service at the time. That was a comments that the food service or a service window would be eliminated from the plan. So that was a comment at the pre-submission. So I reviewed the project, I look at it, I look pre-submission, and I conclude that as a condition of this, that there would be no, food service window or service window. And the applicant's representative actually understood that they were going to have one. So the floor plans right now reflect a service window. So I'm going to have the applicant's representative speak to that to see if you want to allow maybe just for the mini golf a service window, or if you just wanted some, to remain indoor, no service window in this case. So.
Sure, you want me to jump in? Kyle Collins, KPC Planning, 16 Library Avenue, here on behalf of the applicant, JTB Real Estate. I went back and reviewed the pre-submission conference report, and I believe at the time it was more about potentially having a third use on the property. And what it said, it says, restaurant shall be a standard restaurant. No separate concession for the miniature golf use. And the intended use shall be fully described in the application. So the intention of this service window is supposed to be clearly accessory to the mini golf. It's not to represent a takeout restaurant or anything like that. That is the recollection, and after looking at it, there was proposed to be, as shown on the plans that were submitted, originally, and again, just the difference between the plans that were submitted with the pre-submission versus the plans on the final, They were redesigned in order to take out exclusively, they only had a service window to service the miniature golf. And there was concern about this concession in terms of having a kind of a principal food concession at this as well. The building as designed and submitted with the final application actually has the ability to actually walk in the building so that for the purposes of the mini golf exclusively. It's located on the northeast corner of the building, has one door coming in, one door coming out. However, it does have a service window shown on the plans as submitted, one facing the miniature golf and one facing Montauk Highway. I do have Bruce Barnett. He is one of the principals as well as more familiar with the operations of the facilities. So he's here as well if the board has any additional concerns. But I just want to make it clear, the intention here is not to have a takeout restaurant window here. This service window is to be accessory to the miniature golf use itself.
Okay.
I saw John had his hand up for a while I was speaking.
Hand up. Is there ability to let him in?
Where's John? I think he had to take his, he's still muted.
Oh, okay.
But now he's got his sailboat on, so I don't know what happened. John, you there?
Does the board have any memory about this? I tend to think it was related to the food service also and not the mini golf.
That's my recollection as well, Claire, but if we could see the plan.
Oh, yeah.
So
Bruce Barnett's here if you need me.
Oh.
We could understand what Kyle was describing.
You have it, Claire, or I could bring it up, either way.
Go ahead, Bill, because it only reflects on the floor plans. Is that correct, Kyle?
Yeah, you want me to bring it up or you have it?
I can bring it up, no problem.
Either one.
I got to switch. This is the floor, this is the elevations. I think it's in the elevations that it's reflected.
No, it's reflected on the, yeah.
Right here, right? Service windows.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know there's one here. This is the Montauk Highway side. I think this doesn't make any sense, but maybe retaining this one. How does the board feel about that?
Where's the mini golf?
Mini golf would be to the east of here.
To the right.
To the right.
Yeah, this plan. Montauk Highway's top of the page.
I mean, from a practical standpoint, anything that would reduce interior at this time, these environment we're in, interior use, things that can be done from an exterior window seems to make a lot of sense. You know.
Yeah, I think that's one of the I did speak to the applicant, and I think the issue about having the window facing the mini golf, the applicant's fine with that, and Bruce can speak for himself. But in terms of, and as Dennis mentioned, what we've been going through for the last 18 months, if we do have a situation where, again, we're not going to restaurants and everything, which is pickup, which we've had, over the last year or so, you wanted to have the ability to at least have that window for that sole purposes, only facing Montauk Highway.
For the sole purpose of takeout food.
If in fact we went back to a COVID situation, it only makes sense because there is access, to the kitchen, and that would make the most sense to location to have a pickup.
Bruce, did you need to be heard on this? I don't know if.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You're on.
Okay. Hold on. Let me turn my phone off because I don't know which one you're hearing me on. Hold on one second. Hello?
Yeah, we got you on full video, Zoom video.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to turn my phone off. The window facing the golf course is specifically for the sale of the merchandise that goes along with playing mini golf, the clubs, the balls, the paper. It's not meant at all for food service whatsoever. And we would covenant to that. As far as the window facing the Montauk Highway, it's not our intention to use that window. It was just put in there so that we didn't have to, scamper if we ever have a condition again like we have right now, which is the government, putting in an emergency situation that you can't go inside, and so it's not our. In today's world, we want to cut down on as much help as possible. So we don't want them, servicing one window, servicing another window, running all over the place. So the people are going to come in one door, get whatever they want and leave. As far as the ice cream that's there, and then the window is just for the golf.
Okay.
If I might, so that window facing Montauk Highway, you say you want it to be a service window in the event of another COVID shutdown or similar.
If you're telling us we can't have anybody come into our come inside, then we'd have no way of servicing them. So that's why. And I've been, I live in the village, West Hampton Beach, and I go around to all the Chinese restaurants, and they all, cutting holes in the side of the side of their doors or their windows or whatever. It's sort of a makeshift stupid situation. I'm sure they didn't ask any approvals to do it. They just did it. And so we're building something from new. Why not have a window that can open so that's accessible in case we have this horrible emergency again?
Yeah, but from a planning standpoint and a code standpoint, it's either a service window or it's not. I don't know.
Covenant that we wouldn't use it unless it was an emergency situation by the federal government or by the town government.
Mr. Barnett, I just heard you say, well, if people want to buy ice cream. So that says to me that this is a takeout window for people to buy food while they're going to the plane. Then you just said you can buy ice cream there.
It's a separate window.
When you walk in the door, you can buy ice cream inside. The window on Montauk Highway would only be for emergency use if we have the same situation that we're in right now with COVID, where you're not allowed to go inside a restaurant. We had that for quite a while.
And the window facing the mini golf is you could service people for the point of sale in terms of giving them their balls and clubs, and to return balls and clubs. So it would not be for the purposes of, selling merchandise that's there or any of that type of stuff. It's strictly for servicing the miniature golf customers.
No problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's a utility to the mini golf, so.
You want to look at that language, maybe refine it. It's related to the use because it's related to the special exception. So I can show you that part. So here's the resolution, and it said no outdoor window for takeout or miniature golf without further review and approval by the planning board. Do you want it to say just eliminate the miniature golf parts? Or do you want a little bit more refined in terms of any takeout window would be for emergency use only?
Or you could specify, the location of the window. Window on the west side shall be strictly accessory to the mini golf use. And specify the one on the north side of the building facing Montauk Highway would only be utilized. I don't know. That's a good question on how you.
Why don't you just leave it upon further review and approval by the planning board? Well, you would just come back to the planning board and say, we're in a situation right now. We can't serve people. We have the window. Will you give us the use? I think that would be easier than trying to find language.
Okay.
Every contingency well, look, we're hitting contingencies we've never even thought of. So
Right.
the
Well, I'm
least,
just thinking of how they've done it over, right now. In the past 18 months, they've permitted through the town board and I think through the fire marshals where they permitted outdoor seating within the, through a town board resolution in the parking lots of restaurants. So it might,
Right.
it might
That would
be
supersede the planning board's condition if they allowed for specific, special conditions.
Be
on
faster.
that.
They went
Right,
faster.
exactly. Emergency situations. So I agree. I think we'll just speak to the east window and the north window, just leave it, take the label off for the north window. How's that sound?
Yeah, take the label off so it's not specifically identified, but still can install a window that could be operable if needed in time of emergency, right?
I
I actually preferred it the first way.
yeah,
I prefer planning board approval because emergency is in the eye of the beholder.
and yeah, just come back to us. We're going to review it. If you're going to come back to us and you're going to say, I can't serve ice cream because nobody can go indoors anymore. I don't think it's going to be, everybody's going to be unreasonable about it.
Well, what about the timing of it? How long is
that's the problem.
I mean, if the federal government or the town government declares an emergency, it's an emergency. If Bruce Barnett declares an emergency, it's not an emergency.
I never knew during COVID that you weren't allowed to go into a restaurant. That never happens. You never were not allowed to go into a restaurant.
I wasn't allowed to go into the restaurant on Sunset Avenue in West Hampton Beach. I wasn't allowed to go into the Chinese restaurant.
That wasn't government because I picked up a lot of to-go food. And I went into a lot of restaurants. It wasn't the government saying you couldn't go in.
Yeah,
I just want to make it a point that nobody said you had to. That was a choice of a restaurant.
Yeah.
Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah.
From a practical standpoint, though, we'd want a situation where people stay outdoors, I think.
Yeah.
It could happen. Yeah, no, I hear you. And I just think, so we'll change it to read the east side may allow for the miniature golf use only, right? And then the north side shall be subject to future review and approval by the planning board. Does that feel comfortable? Does the board members feel comfortable with that?
Sure.
Yeah. With that.
Kyle, you good with that?
Yep.
Right.
And then I'll just say the floor plan should remove any reference to the north side being a service window at this time. So.
Great.
Okay, so I'll review these conditions. There's a couple question marks, but we'll just go through them at the time if everybody's comfortable. We're good? Okay, so this is the resolution. It describes the application. In this case, it was a type 1 action and the negative declaration was adopted. And there's a staff report that was we've reviewed. So one of the standards is this front yard setback of 50 feet, which may be reduced if the planning board finds the modification, the dimensional regulations will not cause environmental and neighborhood impacts. This is the setback to Montauk Highway. And in your pre-submission, you identified that you had no issues with that being reduced to 25 feet. And so the mitigation is berm and plantings in that area. So that's a finding that's made. And then these are the conditions related to the special exception. No outdoor storage or display permitted without further planning board review. I'll have this change for the outdoor window. So this would be the north window would be for the takeout without further review and approval by the planning board. And then the east window would be just for the miniature golf use. And then the area of miniature golf should not be larger than the 11.828 without further review and approval. That's one of the standards. This is the approval finding, the description of the plans. This is changes to the site plans. Number A through G is town engineer requirements, which need to be updated. I'm sorry, H also. And then I is the fire marshal's requirement for a fire zone. J is your request for the EV charging stations in this case. So there will be, I think in this case, there'll be 4 of them shown. I think 4. based upon 1 per 80 parking spaces.
Well,
Did I not have that?
1 per 80? We need 4?
Oh, 1 per 20, excuse me. And there's is less than 78 parking spaces, right? Requirement, like handicap spaces.
well, we're only going to be installing, what's the land banking number?
6, is it 60? Hold on,
Hold on.
let me get to my pre-submission report.
Hold on a second.
I mean, the staff report. The requirement is 77, 18 land banks. So, EV. So do you want to just do for the 3 charging stations for the installed parking?
Yes, and then we can include the 4th one at such time as if the other are going to be installed.
Is the board okay with that?
Yes, so yeah.
Okay, so 3 charging. Okay.
Those charging stations generate revenue.
Say a minimum of 3.
Yeah. We didn't answer the question. I know there was some question about solar. I'm sorry, that's why there's the question mark there. Did you have any thought about that?
I'd just like to say, you know, the applicant's still considering the solar. They will and definitely are going to construct it, so it will be solar ready. They have not gone through the complete analysis, so they are not objecting to it, but it's now coming down to a budget issue. So again, I appreciate the board's recommendation on that, but at this point, the applicants are not willing to mandate that solar go on here. I did sit through your first work session with Mr. Lieberman, and I support those initiatives, but at this time, again, the applicant is not willing to get mandated to do the solar, but they are actively pursuing and seeing if it does fit into their budget.
Okay, so I'll make a note that it'll be solar ready though, right?
Yeah.
In the staff report?
No, they've committed to make it solar ready. It'll be installed so the roofing system can accommodate the solar. And, you know, the conduit will be provided to easily be installed at some time in the future. And those solar ready measures will be incorporated into the construction of the building.
Okay. Okay, board, any questions about that? Okay, I am going to add another condition related to the site plan. The site plan reflects seats for occupants, the parking, but it's based upon rated occupancy. So there's going to be a little bit of a breakdown. Those 93 seats include outdoor seating, and obviously in the winter there would be no use of this outdoor seating. So I'm just going to have him adjust it to reflect rated occupancy and the additional seats outside, which will come to the 93 that they're proposing. So I'm just going to have some parking calculation adjustments noted on the plan.
Okay.
The lighting plan, I had talked to Kyle about this. I just want to maybe just take a peek at this. I think I had it up. Oh, I just closed it. I don't know if I'm be able to pull it back up. Sorry. Sorry, his plans were too large to put in the packets, so. This is the lighting plan. I'm using the classic goosenecks for the parking lot. and for the actual mini golf too. So I've asked them, because the parking lot, it does face the residential on this side, asked them to reduce that to the 10 feet, which is more in keeping with what you require when you're in a residential or adjacent to a residential zone. So
And the applicants has agreed to reduce the height of those poles in the parking lot to 10 feet.
So, and then this is remaining the 14 feet because it's better for the coverage for this area. And of course, this is a commercial zone here, so this would be more appropriate.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Bruce Barnett. I didn't know that we were required at this time, as we haven't chosen yet, the goosenecks for the golf course.
What would you want something different? I was just assuming.
We're entertaining putting in. Of course, we'd have to come back, I guess, to talk to you about it. But putting in some palm trees that can have a conduit running through it, and then the lighting would be underneath the palms, so that would not go up in the air, but you'd hardly see the lighting at all. It'd all be reflecting down.
You want to see that, board? We review all lighting, so it's something different than the goosenecks.
Claire,
then you just come back.
I would recommend at this point review the plan as proposed, and if there's going to be an amendment to the lighting that's going to be proposed, we'll come back for review and approval of that lighting fixture.
Yeah, so using the gooseneck right now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So we'll leave that as a condition. Additional or change lighting, come back. That's typical. It's in the code. Yep. Okay. Good. And then just want to double check. We talked about the landscaping, Kyle. They're just going to make an adjustment to the landscaping. I think this is the plan. Just some evergreen landscaping in this area to screen this parking right here, which is the most visible from Montauk. And here the area is being supplemented, and especially to in this area, you're also supplementing some landscaping here, which is the residential use here. So the board is comfortable with that, right? The buffer that's provided. Okay, I just want to make sure. And then just some changes to the seating plan. It's called the construction plan, but Kyle and I spoke about that, so that should be fine. And that's related to the numbers for that. And I'll go back to the resolution here. So we're looking at the same thing. This is just general conditions. Here's the HVAC system screen, the lighting, proposed lighting, no outdoor public address system, the dumpster screen, and a DPW approval. Here, I'm sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought, but it's 18 parking spaces being land banked, and the B is going to be the town attorney approval documents and filed with the county clerk. So the SWIP requirements, the engineering fee, affidavit, 6 sets of plans, and then a maintenance bond for the landscaping. So I'm recommending a decision on the project if the planning board's prepared.
I think we're good. Kyle, everything?
I think we're all good.
Good. Okay, do we have a motion for approval?
Motion.
Motion by Craig.
Second.
Second by Gloria, and all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? We have 5 yes and 1 absent.
2 absent.
Thank you very much.
No, 1 absent, one
vacancy.
One vacancy.
One vacancy.
Yeah.
So the next one is Flying Points.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is Flying Points. This is the one on the corner of Montauk Highway, County Road 39, Flying Point Road.
Okay.
That was built. They're coming in for a change for medical office use and has a higher parking requirements. So normally we could do this administratively, but in this case, sorry, I have to. Can't get through it quickly. Sorry about this. Normally, we could do it administratively, but in this case, they are maxed out on their parking, except that there is a waiver provision possible related to section 100C. that you granted with the initial site plan on the project. So let me bring up the site plan. I'm sorry about all of this. This is the resolution I prepared if you're inclined to consider. This is the aerial, and it would be this building for medical office use, and then a portion of this building, I think in this general area for medical office use, proposed on the project. And here is the site plan for the project too.
What was the original use going to be?
Office.
Okay.
Office or retail was the two permitted uses.
Thank you.
On the property. So that would be 1 to 180, and then medical in your code, our code is 1 to 150. So he did the parking calculations here, and they're requesting a waiver of 7 additional parking spaces pursuant to section 100C of the town code. Kyle, do you want to speak to this a little bit?
I think you covered it. You know, again, it's a waiver of 7 spaces. The board did grant a waiver due to the public cross-access easements that's associated with the, in effect, it's kind of a roadway that goes from Flying Point to the old Pier 1 site, and, you know, assisted in improving the circulation and try to alleviate some of the pressure on the intersection of Flying Point and Montauk Highway. The code provides a waiver provision for providing that public access easement. The proposal to waive that still complies with the standards for providing at least 2/3 of the number of spaces as required. And complies with the those waiver provisions. It's 7 spaces. It's not significant.
Right. The only other thing I want to point out that since this project was approved and planned for, and the plan was always to have the cross access through all these properties, right? All the connection. This access actually has happened since then. So someone here can, you know, park here, use this, go, you know, park there, use that. That's all been, that's part of the whole. So now it's more of a group parking lot than it was before.
Shared.
And
the shared parking.
The property to the east, is that the gym?
This is the gym, and that was always contemplated. That was always connected with this proposal, but this is the connection that's recently happened, and it just makes
the diner.
Well, yeah. So I just wanted to point that out to you. So I have a resolution prepared with the waiver. The only clarification was a note on the plan, just outlining all the waivers granted in this case. And it is a type 2 action, so there's no environmental review in this project.
Okay, so we have a motion on the waiver?
Anyone?
We have a motion.
Can I just see the site plan again? I'm sorry.
Sure, of course, no problem.
And make sure that I'm not.
Do you want me to zoom in a little bit?
Yeah, please.
Okay, that's always a question. How do I do that?
You offered, sorry.
I know.
Don't offer that. Up, zoom.
Zoom. Okay, zoom 2. I don't know.
That'll make
that
it.
Didn't work. Yeah, my zoom is not like reflected anymore.
All right, show me the area that, okay, do it.
Does the aerial help more?
No, that was to stay with the, well, either way, I just trying to get an idea of which building again. All right, go to the map. The
aerial?
Yeah, go to the aerial. Which, okay, go ahead. Which building?
Is now connected, or where are the uses?
Where the uses, where they want to change the use.
This entire front building will be medical.
Right.
And then a portion of this building, which I believe is about 2,000 square feet in this building. I had it written down here, just a second.
Okay.
2,800 square feet in this building.
Okay, and
this building's 4,000 square feet.
Okay, and where does he want to eliminate, get the waiver from the parking?
Oh, so the waiver is that you would grant it based upon the fact that this is a public right of way. All this is public right of way. So that allows you to grant a waiver from parking requirements based upon the fact that there's shared parking. And so this person, you know, somebody could park here and walk over.
Okay.
Just one clarification, the specific finding in the original approval for the original waiver was the area associated with this public access easement only. If you look at the square footage, because it's the way the waiver says for, you get one space waived for every 200 square feet of public access easement. So that area, if you look at the area of that easement, that's the area that determined the number of parking spaces that could be waived.
The only reason you're coming back here is because the medical would require more parking spaces and.
Yes, it's 180 for the retail and office use, general office that was approved. The medical office is at 1 per 150.
Claire, you don't see any need for the extra parking?
No, I don't. As you say, as we find in our parking requirements, is the 1 to 150, you know, appropriate for medical? Possibly, you know, but it's not going to make a big difference when not the majority of the site is going to be used for medical. You know, different uses are going to have different requirements. You know, I don't think it rises to the level of, you know, reopening seeker or anything like that in this case.
Just give me the absolute numbers we're talking about.
Sure.
In the original application, it was X number of parking. We waived Y. Now what do we want to waive?
Right, exactly. So that's that is on the map, and I'm going to try to zoom in.
Claire, just hit Control and the plus sign.
Okay, thank you. I know.
And that'll zoom you in.
It's not letting me do it.
Really?
No, it does not like me.
You got a bummer acrobat over there.
Find tools. Oh. Sorry. Yeah, I'm not having any luck with this.
So if you go into view and then zoom, scroll down to zoom, and then pull down zoom 2 again.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then put in, you know, you could put in like 125% or something
yeah,
like that. And it'll zoom.
Yeah, that was my best bet. Okay. So you guys, still not seeing it.
So I have the numbers here if you want to run by them.
Yeah, run the numbers.
If the original, it was 19,003 in the two buildings, 19,030 square feet at 1 per 180 required 107 parking spaces. The waiver provision under the 1 space waiver per 200 square feet of public easement area authorizes under the code up to 58 parking spaces. We did not request that at all. So there was 83 parking spaces provided, which represented, what is it? 77.5% that of what was required. The code requires you, permits you to go down to 66.6%. So we weren't even close to where the minimum number that you could have waived. Now we're just requesting an additional 8 spaces to be waived, and that percentage only gets you to 72% under the current waiver, which is still greater than the 66% that's permitted under the code.
Kyle, you still haven't given me some absolute numbers. The original application was 107. How many?
Was what? 107 and 83 spaces were provided.
Okay, so we waived 24.
25. Oh, was 24 or 25?
Okay, I'm just okay. 24. And now how many spaces we need with the medical use?
Parking required?
Mm-hmm.
115. So the original is 107,
Yeah, thank you.
eight additional spaces to make sure the 115.
Okay, so you want to waive the total number of additional spaces that are needed for this new use.
Yes,
So we're going to go from 24 to 31 or.
correct.
Okay, that's just, it helps me understand the scope.
Got it.
Okay. I'll make sure it's all put on there on the thing, and I'll make reference to the breakdowns in the findings.
I mean, Kyle is providing some of the rationale for why this was done, but it's helpful for me to just see the absolute numbers as well.
Okay.
Me too, Gloria.
Okay, I think we're good. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Gloria.
Second.
Second by Robin. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? 5 yes, 1 absent, 1 vacant.
But
Yeah.
are you getting votes from John? Because he's muted and he's not visible.
Oh.
No.
He was raising his hand about 15 minutes ago, and then
Right
put
now,
his screen saver
on
on.
his last vote, he's not visible and he's muted. So we don't have a problem with the vote.
Oh, John's not in, he's not present. Yeah, change the count.
He hasn't been present for the last 2 applications. This one.
That's right.
And
Yeah, mark him as absent, two absent.
Right. It was
We're on a tight
GTB.
form now.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, I just
Okay,
don't.
thank you.
Votes.
Yeah, I saw his boat come up, and then that's John sailing away.
He was raising his hand, and I guess he was going to try to tell us something, but
I think it was just a wave.
He's just saying goodbye.
He checked out.
His ship has come in.
Okay, so it's 4
And
in
left.
favor, 2 absent, no against, and no abstentions.
Thank you
Claire,
very
ready
much.
to go on Brit Petroleum or?
Yep.
Excellent.
Yep. So I at the last meeting, the board had discussed the application, and they felt that the traffic analysis was something that they'd like some assistance on and charge back the applicant pursuant to the town code. I went out and solicited, I thought was going to be 3 estimates, and I didn't get a response from someone, but I got 2 back, one from MPV and the other from McLean, which you had recently used. McLean came in at $3,200, the same scope of work, and MPV came back at $7,000. So yeah, so there's a little difference there.
Yeah.
I'm recommending McLean because they did a fine job last time, and it seems to be very in keeping with what you're looking for. So I would recommend a resolution to retain McLean and charge back the applicants related to what the town code allows. The applicant knows this. He might be here. His name is Chuck. If you can let him in, Charles.
Can I ask you, McLean did which report? Not the.
They did when you worked on the Amazon.
Okay, no, I just needed a reference point.
Yeah, Ray Tobias, and he's the one who signed the.
Ray Tobias, yeah, we've worked with him a lot.
Okay,
and that was a 3,700 with
3,200.
Yeah, okay. So that was I was surprised at the difference in
It does. Every time I'm surprised. But Chuck's here. I just said if you had a question, but he understands it. He's ready to go. And so he'll get us the payments, and I will let them know to start the work for you to look at. This resolution would also be to extend the action deadline for SECRA until January 13th.
will that give us enough time to get the report, review the report before?
Well, we have the new policy, which is the 8 days prior,
I know.
which is good, which is great. And he said he'd have a 2 or 3 week turnaround. So there's some timing there with Christmas, but it could happen. So.
Okay.
Claire, I guess I made myself a note about vacuum and air machines on the edge of the property. I guess from a letter we got. Is that supposedly they were to be removed, but they're not? So.
They're
if we're-
showing it at 19 feet, of a 19-foot setback from the south property line. We could talk to the applicant now about it. I don't know if I have the plans.
Yeah, I'm only raising it because I know we're getting close to an action deadline, and if that's still an issue, I'm not sure if it is an issue. I had a question mark in my notes.
It's an issue. When I was going through the secret documents, I brought it up as an issue too, because of noise, obviously being a secret issue. So I asked the applicant to show it on the plan. He provided a plan. It's showing 19 feet from the south property line. There is an opportunity maybe to make it to 20 feet, which would meet at least the buffer setback. But maybe just ask the applicant to be prepared to address that at the next meeting. Would that be correct?
Sort of what I was suggesting, so that we don't hit a deadline and we still have an issue, or may have an issue.
Chuck, is that okay with you?
That's not a problem. There's a limited amount of space to put it because of the fact that the parking wall buffers is buffering on all three setbacks, which is a rear yard setback, which is a buffer area, the road setback, front yard setback at 20 foot for the road, and a 10-foot setback for the property line on the east side. So it becomes a difficult situation. If the board feels that it can't be accommodated, I'm sure it can be eliminated.
Okay. So it'll be discussion next time. I'll write myself a note too, so we don't forget. Okay. Great. So this is a resolution to retain McLean and to extend the action deadline to January 13th.
Very good. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Gloria.
Second.
Second by Craig. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? We have 4 yes, 2 absent, 1 vacancy.
All right.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Who's up, Anthony or
That's me, 11. Sean Dunn?
Sean Dunn? Yep.
Yep, right. We did 10 already, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So Sean Dunn, this is a request for, and I believe Susanna Herman is here. But this is simple. This is a 2-lot subdivision on Appaquack Point Road and in West Hampton. We did a pre-app report on this 4 or 5 years ago. It's been renewed. I'll show you the map. It's got an existing single-family residence. They were looking to do 2 lots, which required relief from the ZBA because this is R40 zoning, and required development rights to do it. At the time, the zoning board granted the relief, subject to securing enough development rights to make this work. So that's already done, and now the applicant is stuck in the health department. And so basically they asked for a waiver of the pre-application policy so they could renew the expired pre-app report. My only caveat to that is that I don't have an issue with it. They've already secured the approval from the ZBA with the condition. I would just note that we would have to have a final hearing at the final stage if the board's inclined to extend this report, which would bring it then to January 21 of 2023. Anybody have any concerns? That's not, then I would recommend extending it or renewing, I guess, the pre-application report until January 21st, 2023.
Great. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Robin, second by Gloria. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? We have 4 yes, 2 absent, and 1 vacancy.
Okay. Then I have Bridgewood Lot 66. This is an overclearing. Let me go back here. Okay. You actually did a revegetation approval on this. This is Matt's. I'm just pinch hitting for him while he's taking care of his newborn baby. The applicant basically wanted to come in with a modified plan, which they did, and Matt actually reviewed the survey, shows the clearing line and what's being revegetated. And they also gave us the revegetation plan that Matt has looked over. They really didn't change too much, just a few change in the species and maybe a few less items. But Matt looked at this. I showed it to Teresa Mason. All the species were okay. So I was just going to recommend a new approval for Bridgewood Lot 66, which is 51 Tansy Lane. And it would be subject to the same conditions that you had previously. An as-built survey, the project limiting fence, all that stuff, which would remain the same. So if you have no objections, I would recommend approving the revegetation plan for Bridgewood Lot 66.
Okay, very good. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Robin. Second by Craig. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? We have Mr. Ziccarelli back, so we're 5 yes.
Well, I wasn't here for the
Oh,
presentation.
you weren't? Okay, so we'll do it. So we'll pull you out of it. So we'll have 4 yes, 2 absent, 1 vacancy. Welcome back.
Okay, it wasn't an emergency, but I had to do something very important.
Hey, no problem. We have a quorum.
I get your attention by waving that I was going.
Hey, John, by the way, has anyone ever told you sound like Anthony Fauci?
Oh yeah.
Next time you talk, I'm gonna...
If he did, he would.
It's in Italian.
Right? Am I right? Am I right?
Yeah, you're right.
Only Fauci right there.
I have to have a different voice. I'm taller. Resonate better.
Dennis, since I have the next item up and the applicant's not present, do you mind if Wayne Bruin comes back in? I think we may have.
Oh, sure. Well, we have a resolution.
Oh, yeah.
Great. Let's pull back the Scuttle Hole Road. Sure.
Yeah, BH 680, which is 680 Scuttle Hole Road.
Okay.
Number 3, right?
Number 3.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's back to number 3.
Thank you. Hi, John. Hi, Wayne.
Hello.
Go ahead.
So I think Wayne and I spoke very briefly, and I think his applicant is willing to trim down the existing vegetation. We came to a resolution on 10 feet maximum. So that way there can still be immediate screening of Scuttle Hole Road, but then it will still allow you to have more of a view shed of the historic home. So Wayne, if you want to add anything.
I was going to say, Jackie, one of the questions that was raised, I think it was Craig that actually raised it. And so based on the photographs and everything, and based on what my client said, that right in front of the house, those existing trees, arborvitae, green giants, whatever they are exactly, are probably 12 to 15 feet in height.
Mm-hmm.
So he was concerned. We tried to reach out to his arborist, and actually he just called and he said, yeah, trimming, you can't go and trim more than a third of the plant and hope there's, good growth afterwards or otherwise. So he said 10 feet would probably work. And I think that's what Jackie had suggested to us. And so my client is willing to and suggested language here for a condition would be prior to the signature of the map, the applicant shall trim the existing hedgerow plantings along Scuttle Hole Road and Halsey Cook Lane to a maximum height of 10 feet to be verified by the planning department. And thereafter in the covenants to have a provision that we would maintain that hedgerow along those streets to a maximum of 10 feet, but also a provision that no new plantings exceeding 4 feet shall be added along the street frontage.
That accomplishes what we.
Yeah.
I think that's a good middle ground.
And it's clean, very clear what has to do what, and gives, I don't think it's burdensome to the landowner.
Jackie, just a little house cleaning on your resolution. I think it's number 7, the 3rd bullet speaks about the way it's worded, it almost mandates the existing house go underground. I meant to mention that.
We did cover that. Sorry, it was very quick though. All new utilities shall be installed.
Oh, yeah, okay. You inserted
I'm
the
just
word
going to
new.
add that language in. Yeah.
Okay.
Or it would only be on number 1.
We could separate it out, but I figure if we put in all new utilities, that existing can remain and the new ones can be put underground.
Yeah,
That's generally how we handle it, Dennis, if you're
yeah, I think the one that way it was written, it didn't have that, but.
It just said all utilities shall be installed underground. So I'm just gonna say all new utilities shall be
Yeah.
installed underground.
Wayne, do you have anything else to add to the?
No, I think you covered it all and don't want to belabor it. I know you have more things to address here.
Good. I think we can move forward with an approval then. Do we have a motion for approval?
Motion.
Motion by Gloria, second by Mrs. Zuccarelli. Dr. Fauci, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions? 5 yes, 1 absent, 1 abstention. You're muted, doctor.
Make that one vacancy, one vacancy.
1 vacancy, yes.
Not
5
abstention.
yes, 1 absent, 1 vacancy.
Thank you. So the next one I'd like to go to is Pine Neck. So this is a
Okay, number 13.
Yeah, this is a certificate of abandonment. I just want to make sure I have the correct documents loaded before I share. This is a abandonment. It's just a little bit different where the applicant's neighbor has consented to the full abandonment of the full portion. So can everyone see that?
Yeah.
So right here, so this is the subject parcel who's making the application. Normally, they would only be entitled to the northern half of the road. We have received a notarized affidavit from the neighbor to the south that is consenting to this property owner taking the full width of Pine Street.
Wow.
Yep, so here's the survey. They will be allowed to abandon the full width, which is 40 feet wide.
That's a
And-
first.
Yeah, well, I've actually seen it a couple of times, not very often though. And here's the affidavit which I gave to Kathleen and she was able to review prior to the meeting from the current property owner to the south. So if you're comfortable, we just have a resolution of no objection to the abandonment of Pine Street. It is, it's a east-west road. Everyone's served by north-south road, so there's no need to improve it at this time.
Are you going to mention about the entirety going to the one property, or is it not?
Yeah, I did say the entire portion. Yeah.
Okay, good. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Gloria.
Second.
Second by Craig. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? 5 yes, 1 absent, 1 vacancy.
I have the next one, number 14, Whispering Oaks at Wainscott, Lot 9. Wayne Bruin is here for that one.
Okay.
Where am I here? This is 52 Scott Line Drive. This is in the village of Sagaponack. Wayne, you could correct me if I don't summarize this right. I took this over actually from Matt. It's a covenant amendment. This is a subdivision that was approved by the planning board with clearing restrictions. I don't know exactly when it was done, but it was before it was obviously an incorporated village. The property is obviously now in the incorporated village where they do not impose any clearing restrictions, nor do they acknowledge the Aquifer Protection Overlay District. In this particular case, the applicant is asking the planning board to amend the covenant because it is my understanding, and Wayne or Kathleen could correct me, this particular covenant did not contain the language that normally says that can be altered by the planning board, its successors and all the rest of it. So the applicant has requested this board to amend the covenant as it relates to just this lot. The applicant is also asked to do it with a public hearing. That way it would put the other property owners on notice about this covenant amendment. That's sort of all I have for it, but I don't know if Wayne wants to chime in or fill in.
Yeah, I'd like to clarify. Anthony, jumping in quickly, you summarized it well. The subdivision was approved in 1985. The Aquifer Protection Overlay District had just been created. There's an adjoining, this is Whispering Oaks at Wainscott, and I think there's an adjoining map, the Wainscott Harbor Estates. There are 2 subdivisions approved. You impose covenants with certain clearing restrictions as was required by the Aquifer Protection Overlay District. Of course, in 1989, it was amended to create the lot by lot clearing restrictions. And if this was still in the town, you would consider, amending it to the current percentage. However, as Anthony indicated, the village of Sagaponack was created in 2005, and their zoning, they have no provision for an aquifer protection overlay, nor any enforcement powers over your covenants. In fact, the covenants cannot be enforced by the village, can only be enforced by the town, but you have no interest in the village anymore. So the request here, and we coordinated and asked the village, and the village provided you with a letter dated November 9th, 2021. They would prefer, they have no objection to extinguishment of that clearing covenant. And furthermore, they would prefer that you take care of every lot in the subdivision at this time. However, we don't represent all the other lots, but I can tell you, I've been approached by several of the lot owners. And so I think what I'd like to do here is, at least it's not required by the covenant, but on our own regard, I would like to give notice to all the lot owners so they can understand what is going on, and then observe what your decision is on this, and so that they could thereafter make their own applications. So that's the purpose of the notice. It's not a requirement. And I just want to state that, we're willing to have a hearing, even though the covenant actually doesn't, I believe it doesn't even require a hearing. So
Do we need to do a hearing? Can't we do a mailing or something?
we could do a mailing, but, in light of a couple of cases, one in particular, we were trying to do that one subdivision on Daniel Hedges, and then waived the covenant, and then the other lot owners sued both the planning board and the village over not having notice and an opportunity. So I don't want to even leave that door open. I'd rather have a public hearing, and anybody who has concerns could come in and say whatever they have to say, and we're okay with that. So.
Okay.
Kathleen, that's an appropriate request.
Yeah, the covenant doesn't require a public hearing, but it does require a majority plus one vote of the planning board. So.
Anthony, do you have a hearing date set yet, or?
I was scheduling my two things today. I was gonna do February 10th.
February 10th.
Yep.
That good for you, Wayne?
Yes, that's good.
Okay. Do we have a motion to, what's our action? I guess just scheduling the hearing then, right?
Yeah, scheduling a hearing on a covenant amendment. Yep.
Great. Do we have a motion for that?
Motion.
Motion by Glorian,
Second.
second by Robin. All in favor, aye. Opposed, abstentions. We have 5 yes, 1 absent, 1 vacancy.
And I'll work with the council and Anthony on the notice for that.
Yep.
All right, great.
Okay, thank you.
Who is doing, Jackie, are you doing Riegler?
Yes, yeah. So this was just, unfortunately, the notice went out off of my draft resolution, which had some leftover language from a copy and paste. So we just have to reschedule this to get the proper notice in the paper. I am requesting that it be rescheduled for January 13th. This is dealing with a common driveway easement. So I think there are 5. This would make 6. Chair LaFaro seemed to be okay with it. I just wanted to ask, since it was a mistake on our side.
Very good. And what's the date? It's going to be January 15th.
January 13th, 2022.
Very good. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Robin.
Second.
Second by Craig. All in favor, aye. Opposed, abstentions. We have 5 yes, 1 absent, 1 vacancy.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Jackie.
Then I have number 16, Canal Southampton Battery Storage. We seem to be getting some more of these coming in since the town enacted some regulations here. Let me just, sorry. Oops. Okay. This is the, it's a pre-submission conference request. This is for a battery storage facility. In this case, it would be the R60 zoning district. This is North Road, and the subject property is a property that currently has a couple of cottages on it, and then a second property which is vacant. North Road, it goes all the way up to County Route 39 and then goes down to Montauk Highway. The applicant has submitted a request to develop these two properties. Obviously, they get rid of the cottages and develop it with a battery storage facility over 600 kilowatt hours, which is a special exception. We did one. This one's bigger than the last one we looked at. And of course, whoops, sorry. Hard to read here, but I'm sure for the pre-submission conference, the design professionals will have much better presentation materials. But the plan is for 30 battery enclosures. Each would have 24 battery modules. And of course, all the other standard equipment that goes with this. This, my understanding, would, just sorry about this. You can't see it on the aerial, but the PSEG station is just over here. So they would be drawing from that facility, from the grid, and then storing it in the battery units on this property. This is for a pre-submission conference. The applicant will present all this to the board, and then you'll have questions. And I was going to recommend February 10th for this one as well.
Okay, very good.
Anthony, this is
Sure.
this is in a residential zone,
It's in a residential zone, correct?
and this. So would they have to go get a variance? What? How could?
No, it's a special exception
Okay.
in the residential zone, yeah.
There's no resident, even though it's a residential zone, there's no residences there. It's that the exit ramp, if you know the Sunrise, the exit ramp.
That's right. That's right.
Yep.
Yep. So yep, that's correct.
The highway barn is on the corner. Okay, very good. For February 10th, we have a motion.
Motion.
Motion by Zuccarelli, second by Gloria, all in favor. Aye, opposed, abstentions. 5 yes, 1 absent, 1 vacancy.
Let me turn this off.
I have the next one, Channing Daughters. This is, I would say this may be COVID related. They had a tent related to their winery outside and where they served wine. And one of the conditions of the original approval of the winery way back when was that there shall be no, and I'll pull up the actual language. I have the covenant open so we can peek at it. It says, except for events permitted by the town board, no accessory use or activity permitted herein, including entertainment or amplified music, shall be permitted outside the winery building. So it was very specific that if you're going to serve wine, you're going to have to do it inside the winery building. So they're asking for an amendment to the site plan to allow a seasonal tent. And I understand that would be, maybe I'll have Wayne explain the dates that would be, but for a 1,408 square foot tent over Bluestone for seating and wine tastings. That's the request. And then also a request to modify that covenant to allow for this instance also outside the wine tasting outside the winery, which in this case may be reasonable, but there has to be a public hearing to amend the covenants. So I'll have Wayne explain it further.
Are we doing music outside also, or just want to do the wine tasting?
I would not support the music.
No amplified.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, no, that's.
Yeah.
I can speak to that. The winery has always historically had their wine tastings inside the winery building. But when COVID came along, just like all other facilities, they were enabled by the town board to have some activities outside, and with the fire marshal's approval, that included through last year. So they put up a temporary tent on a gravel area, and all they did was the wine tastings. There's no music, no amplified music or otherwise, or entertainment. It's just the wine tasting, some tables, some barrels or whatever, and it's only the wine tasting and nothing. And while that's happening, it's seasonal, obviously. While that's happening, there's no wine tasting taking place in the building. And it's only that language that says technically it says outside of the winery building. So that's why we asked you for either an interpretation or an amendment to that for the exception that, you know, even though it's inside the boundaries of the tent, it is perhaps technically outside of the existing winery building, but so that's what we're asking for clarification and site plan also accompanying that. It doesn't add any parking. The capacity is, you know, limited. It is seasonal. They're thinking the end of April to early November, all of course, weather permitting. It was there for a week or two. You know, November was nice weather this year. So they had it a week or two, but then the tent was taken down. So, and that would be the proposal. And then in the winter time, the limited time they are open and they have really very little business, that they would do the wine tastings in the building. So we provided pictures. You can see they just put picnic tables out and that's it. So under the tent.
One comment I made to Wayne is that maybe to have the bluestone and some of it maybe replaced, or maybe the entire thing replaced with something that would be more handicap accessible. Maybe like a finer stone that's you could, you know, that would be more accessible. So I made that comments and hopefully they'll do some changes.
I've asked Larry Perrine, the manager, to look into that and asked him, you know, what actually occurred over the last year and a half when they did do this and how they accommodated the handicap. So we did ask that and we can address that when the hearing takes place.
Okay.
Well, can I ask what kind of, are we setting a precedent here? The original reasoning for the tents going outside was the town board decision because of COVID. Is this going to now open up a whole series of people coming back for trying to get tents where we didn't want this to happen specifically? We were trying to keep wine tasting inside the building. I mean, I understand the importance of COVID and the emergency. I'm just wondering if we're setting a precedent here.
Well, I think if I may address that. So number one, the rationale for this, when the winery was approved, they were concerned pretty much of outdoor activities that were raising noise. And so the exception there was first special events that the town board would approve. And that's the exception to such activities outside. So, and it was really, you know, the question you asked was, is there entertainment or amplified music or otherwise outside? And there will be none. And it's only this wine tasting. So I think it would be unique to this winery. I would think you would be concerned if you started having businesses, bars and restaurants doing that. But it's sort of akin to the outdoor dining provisions that the town allows for restaurants to have outdoor dining on a limited basis as long as their capacity inside is reduced. So it's the similar situation, at least for this winery.
Wayne, I'm just trying to go back to the original reasoning behind not allowing this in the original project. They were not allowing this in the original project because they didn't want the noise or such. Are we now going around that original thinking? I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't, but I'm just asking.
I think we're going to be asked this kind of thing in a lot of places because this outdoor activity, number one, has kept businesses financially afloat, but it's also created an ambiance that people really like this. So I mean, I think we're going to be seeing more of these kind of applications. That's just my personal opinion.
I think you're right, and I just want to make sure we're not flying in the face of what the public originally or the community originally wanted when these wineries went in there, and not having tents outside, the vision of it. I mean, I understand the town doing the emergency and allowing it. We are now going beyond the town's emergency and allowing it, and we are now changing, permanently changing what it is.
Well, I think that's, that's the function of this board to decide after the public hearing and, given changed circumstances since this covenant was first instituted, is that something that you want to do? Is it time to do that? I mean, your questions are all relevant. I think those are questions you're going to have to contemplate while you consider this application.
Yeah.
And maybe Wayne, give us a little history.
Yeah, I think we can go back and go back here, but more importantly, the unique circumstances of the location of this and the surrounding properties. I appreciate the board's concern that, you may get other applications that may look to this as a precedent. I think you can, make this very unique. It is a winery as opposed to a restaurant or a bar or where those kind of activities where you would expect in the commercial zones or otherwise to try to utilize it. So I think this is limited to this winery, and we can, present more of that information so that the board can understand how we got here, and then also how this is unique to this property.
Wayne, was this originally signed off by the fire inspector?
The tent, yes.
It was?
Yes. The whole COVID thing that was, they reviewed and approved the tent.
Okay.
I think those are all good questions, and we'll look at that during the process. I'll do some digging to see if there's any intent. I think it was because it probably was pretty new, to approve a winery, especially in a residential zone. So they wanted to have some control over it.
Yeah, and I can tell you the Channing Daughters Winery came after Duck Walk and Wolfer, and there were concerns about their location and having activities, weddings, and all sorts of things with nearby properties. Channing actually originally, many years ago, tried to do a couple weddings, and actually it didn't work for them. It wasn't a good venue or otherwise. And they actually got a complaint about one wedding, like this was 20 years ago, and they haven't since done those kind of activities. And they want to keep it low key and just for their own purposes. So they're not about noise and amplified music, but the condition where I'm going to is the condition was sort of something that was generated from the other winery applications and was more or less boilerplate. It wasn't generated specifically because of the property or otherwise. But like Claire said, we can go back and look at all that and make sure you're well aware of how that was generated and how we got here, and how we can distinguish this with any other application.
And there will be a hearing.
Yes.
Okay, I'm fine.
I'm recommending February 10th for the modification and to consider the amendment to the covenant. Did you have any wording for that amendment, Wayne?
No, but we can discuss that and share that.
Okay.
But I think that would be a combined hearing on both the site plan and the amendment.
So February 10th, Claire?
Yeah.
Wait, do we have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Gloria.
Second.
Second by Craig. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? 5 yes, 1 absent, 1 vacancy. Is Anthony here for a comment or?
This is just another extension, 10th, for the Kamakutago subdivision off that private road on North Sea Mecox Road.
Yep.
I actually just met with the town engineer yesterday, who's reviewing some more revised plans, and they're still working with the water authority on the water main extension, which is complicated. So this would just be an extension from December 7th until March 7th, 2022.
Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Gloria.
Second.
Second by Robin. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? 5 yes, 1 absent, 1 vacancy. Claire, Atlantic.
Back. Yeah, so the next application is the Atlantic Golf Club. This has been an extension for a couple months now. The applicant has been preparing some documents to provide additional information to you prior to your decision. I'm going to have the applicants, I think if he's prepared to speak to what he submitted and the next step to the application, which I can also speak to, of course. But I'd like them to explain what they've submitted to you. I did provide it to you the 8 days prior. We received it last Wednesday by electronic form, and we have hard copies also, if that's easier for any of the board members to review. And it's titled an expanded environmental assessment, and it also includes a water analysis by PW Grocers firm with that project. So, you want to speak, Wayne?
Yes, sure. Wayne Bruin on behalf of Atlantic Golf Club. So this application started more than a year ago with a pre-application where you hold a public hearing, received public comments, adopted a pre-application report, and thereafter you received the final application, in which case the board undertook a seeker review and adopted a negative declaration, and then scheduled a public hearing and solicited various advisory reports of the normal course of business. After one or two hearings, there were several comments raised by neighbors. And more recently, after the close of the hearing, one of the neighbors' representatives, legal representatives, submitted a letter, substantial submission, after the close of the record, questioning, among other things, the planning board's negative declaration and the sufficiency of whether you had provided a sufficient reasoned, written reason elaboration as required under seeker. My client asked me to look at those comments, and we asked the board for an opportunity to look at the letter that was submitted after the close of the record and respond to that. And that is where we stand at this moment. So we asked and we consented to an adjournment of your action deadline till today to do that. And in the meantime, what we were able to do is assimilate all the information that was submitted and raised first, putting the potential questions or issues that are normally raised in the seeker context in a expanded environmental assessment form. And first, I want to note that the project has not changed. It's still the 6,500 square foot, 2-story building for additional staff housing on this property. It is additional staff housing. The planning board 3 times previously approved staff housing. We know that the neighbors are questioning the building inspector's interpretation, but they're also questioning this planning board's actions, which you have taken historically since the golf course was approved, but also questioning your actions on every golf course where you approved, including the bridge, which you recently approved additional staff housing. Nonetheless, we provided this information, and we believe this would allow you to amend your negative declaration, which you're authorized to do under seeker. In fact, you're required to constantly look at your seeker determination and determine if there is additional information that arises that would, prompt you to go back to your negative declaration, make sure you addressed all the potential issues and provided the written reason elaboration as required. So we believe that it would be in all the parties' best interest that you amend your negative declaration before you take the action that you're required to do, which you have already reviewed a staff report and considered previous comments, advisory comments, and I believe had fully discussed and deliberated on many of the questions and issues that were necessary for determining site plan review. So we've talked to staff about this, and Claire is aware and I believe can undertake further paperwork that is necessary for you to be in a position to adopt a negative amendment to your negative declaration. And we'd ask that you do that before adopting any resolution taken in action. We understand, I have not received a copy of any notice, but I understand the neighbors believe they have or have requested that this board reopen the public hearing and adjourn, or somehow you could somehow unilaterally extend the action deadline, which you cannot do without our consent. And we believe they've had an opportunity to be heard, not once, but twice, but 3 times, 3 public hearings. You originally adjourned, the hearing here and kept that open, provided a written comment period, and then accepted written comments after the close of the hearing. So there's the documents we submitted address their comments, which would be the normal course. Is public comments are raised, the planning board raises questions, the advisory reports raises questions, and we provided a response. The project hasn't changed. The documents we submitted identify the mitigation that the board originally recognized, including the compliance with all the wetland setbacks. It recognizes the need to maintain the current visual vista, so to speak, to the pond, which we were incorporated. It involved the IA system. It involved reducing the paving to gravel and only necessary paving for handicap accessibility, and a number of other things that are all incorporated into mitigation, which are identified in the record. We also asked both InterScience and PW Grosser's office to look at some of the issues raised, which were not documented in any scientific matter, just raised, conclusively that this would have impacts on the water quality and somehow exceed health department standards or wetland setbacks. And as the Environment Division has indicated, this project more than complies with the wetland requirements, and there's a presumption of no impact on the wetlands, which you identified in your original negative declaration. So the point of this is we'd ask you to provide more of a written reason elaboration before you actually adopt your site plan approval. And I think we would be willing to give you an extension for 1 week to next week, so your staff could have the ability to get that all documented for you.
And I'm comfortable with that, because we have all the information. The information, as he says, not changed. It's just a matter of elaborating the findings all along. So I'm comfortable in amending the negative declaration and preparing the documents for you ahead of time, so you can look at it.
So are we reviewing the neg deck? Is that what we're doing? Because I was looking over the papers and the reports. Are we doing a review of the neg deck and taking it on for a vote again?
That would be your action, would be to, based upon the information submitted, the applicant, they submitted a long form. Yeah. Right. And you would be looking at the long form part 2 and preparing the part 3 for an amended neg deck.
Or POS deck. If we decide after we review it, we could decide it's a POS deck. Is that correct?
If you find new information has been provided, yeah.
You would have to meet the standards for rescission of your negative declaration before you did that.
I'm confused. If it's coming back to the table, is it coming back to the table for a review where you can find a POS deck, or it's coming? I'm very confused, because usually if something comes back, it comes back and it can go either way. You're telling me it can come back for me to confirm, but it can't come back for me to POS deck it?
Well, if you find that the information provided, shows that there'd be an adverse impact, but I think what you're hearing is that the resolution prepared for the board's consideration will likely find that this supplemental material is just giving a more clear picture of a negative impact, that there is no adverse impact.
Okay, I mean, I have a right to read through that. I just want
absolutely.
You
have that information.
Right, I've read through it already. I just want to know that if when we get to next week, after reading it a third and a fourth time, I feel that there's a reason to not to do a neg deck. I have a right to use that information to then vote no to a neg
As
deck.
long as that information supports a conclusion and you know, that there was an adverse environmental impact based on the information. Yeah.
I just want to make sure that that information that we were given, if I choose, I could use it for the basis not to vote for a neg deck.
Yeah, so I just want to remind you procedurally, you already adopted a negative declaration. So the procedural request, you know, what you're considering, Robin,
Yeah.
in all due respect is,
I'm trying
I
to
agree with your counsel, is that the information shows that there's no new information that would arise to a significant adverse impact, and which is part of the standards, which you would first have to meet those standards to rescind the existing negative declaration before you can consider a positive declaration. But more importantly, you could also always amend anywhere along based on this information. And all I'm saying is, if you go back to your negative declaration, it is suggested, and it was suggested by the neighbors, that you didn't take into consideration advisory reports or the public input. And we assimilated all those comments and all your comments and put it in a form which you can provide in my opinion, a better written reasoned elaboration, which the statute requires.
I have no problem. I am just wanting to understand totally. So what's coming on for next week after I read these reports the second and third time is either a substantiation of the neg deck. This would be a clarification, substantiation of the neg deck we've done. Or would you have to, and I have to ask counsel because I don't know how we would do this. We would make a motion based on, or ask for a resolution based on the information we were given to recall the neg deck or amend the neg deck, or what happens if I don't agree?
Well,
I just want to understand what it's on.
You can decide, you know, I think your options are, you can decide to do nothing. You already have a neg deck and you can take an action. The suggestion is, if you review your neg deck and based on the neighbors' complaints, is if you look at the seeker statute, is did you provide a written reason elaboration on all the issues that were addressed? And I think the point is, some issues were raised during the public hearing, and otherwise that maybe you would want to go back and just reiterate why there is not a significant adverse impact. On the other hand, you could always amend your neg deck as being suggested here, or you could entertain a resolution because you believe that there is some change to the project, which hasn't occurred here, that would arise to a significant adverse impact, in which case your action would be to rescind the neg deck. So you got to look at that standard and make sure that's where, you know, if you're going to go that path, but you do have options.
Sarah, are we taking action today?
Just to extend the action deadline.
We're consenting to a one week extension to take action on the site plan application.
Very good.
Your meeting on December 16th.
We don't have to adopt a resolution to extend that, do we?
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
We do. Do we have a motion to extend for 1 week to the December 16th? Action deadline.
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
Motion by Robin.
Second.
Second by Gloria, and all in favor. Aye. Opposed, abstentions. We have 5 yes, 1 absent, and 1 vacancy. Before we adjourn, Gloria, have you signed Sherwood St. George LLC?
The maps are not ready for signature, so it'll be on next week's agenda.
Yeah, it's off the agenda. They are still at the health department. I should get them probably on Monday.
So number 20 is off the agenda. What about 830 County Road 39, formerly Bellringer?
You authorize it, Gloria, and we'll sign them for you.
Yeah, I authorized my stamp to be used.
Okay, so that's number 21 we acknowledged was signed. Very good. we're all in at 6. Hopefully, I know Robin has to step out at 7. But one of the meetings is adjourned. So do we have a motion to adjourn till 6 p.m.? Motion by Gloria and second by Craig. All in favor? Aye. We'll see you at 6 p.m.
See you in a few minutes.
Yeah.
You in 20.